The loading screen welcomes us to the Tower of Trials. The final challenge is about to begin, the legendary floor 100 itself. On the virtual battlefield, a towering angel and a red dragon clash amid hordes of monsters. It is total chaos of lights and explosions. An armored boot stomps heavily across the ground. The guy in command complains about how persistent his enemies are, while sparks fly around. Let me introduce you to Jinwoo, better known in this world as God Jinwoo, the undisputed #1 player in the Battle of Summoners ranking. His avatar wears a hooded robe and light armor, looking like a complete pro. The in-game chat is on fire. The veterans cannot believe this guy is so good without having spent a single cent on microtransactions. A player named Baek Jinwoo sends Jinwoo desperate messages, asking if he is still stuck trying to clear floor 99. But while his character is a god, reality is something else. Jinwoo ignores the notifications on his phone as he walks down the street, looking like an ordinary guy in his leather jacket. He has already made a decision. As soon as he finishes this floor, he is going to quit video games forever. He feels like his real life is a complete disaster. He feels guilty for wasting 10 years playing instead of going to college or getting a decent job. Even his parents look at him with disappointment from the doorway of his room. At 24 years old, he wants to start behaving like a functional person, but first, he wants to give his virtual legend a worthy ending. Back in the game, his archer avatar takes aim with determination. It is the moment of truth, just one more match and he retires. With a quick gesture, Jinwoo deploys his golden summons that fire arrows of pure energy. He is determined to finish this right now. In the middle of the fight, he opens his summoning window to launch the next attack. He has no time to waste. His inventory is insane, full of creatures of every kind that he has collected through a decade of effort. Meanwhile, Rachel, the #2 player in the ranking, comments in the chat that Jinwoo almost never checks messages when he is focused. Jinwoo activates his ultimate skill and summons the gigantic white whale, which rises from a magic circle, lighting up the entire place. His angelic summons charge at the enemies with blinding speed, slicing through the air with their bow. Rachel wonders if 10 years have really already passed since it all started. Time flies when you are the best. Violet energy attacks explode all over the stage, while Jinwoo's avatar pushes his way through the blast. The protagonist grits his teeth, completely focused so he will not make a single mistake in this final stretch. Other rankers like Xenos and Suga are freaking out in the chat. Nobody wants to miss the ending of floor 100. It is a historic event for the community. A massive explosion of white and purple light engulfs the enemy summons, disintegrating everything in its path. 2 of his powerful winged warriors land gracefully after the attack, making sure that nothing is left standing. But the battle continues, and the force of the blows makes feathers and energy fly everywhere. The resistance is fierce. The white whale floats majestically behind Jinwoo while he extends his hand, directing the flow of the battle. Under the hood, his face remains expressionless. He knows victory is guaranteed if he keeps up the pace. Sugo keeps praising his skills in the chat, but Baek Jinwoo interrupts with something more serious. A system announcement has just appeared. A colossal red dragon roars in front of him, charging a massive fireball in its jaws. It is the floor's final boss. The beast exhales a devastating blaze that consumes the entire path toward Jinwoo, who stands still waiting for the perfect moment. The fire reflects in his eyes. There is no fear, only pure calculation as the heat reaches his face. It is the blue dragon's turn. Jinwoo summons it to counter the fire with a burst of water and freezing energy. The elemental clash is brutal, with the blue dragon unleashing a torrent that collides directly with the boss's flame. In the chat, the others wonder if the game system is changing. Rachel suspects the administrators never expected anyone to get this far. A whirlwind of energy and lightning starts swallowing the entire stage. The game world seems to be collapsing under the power of the confrontation. Jinwoo watches in shock as the surroundings distort. Baek Jinwoo screams that the real world is changing and merging with the game. Baek Jinwoo's message is clear. This reality is turning into the world of summoners. The madness has just begun. A blinding explosion of light marks the end of the battle. All the effort of 10 years culminates in this burst. The phone screen shows the dream message. You have cleared floor 100. The world record is now his. I did it. Jinwoo lets out a shout of victory in the middle of the street, raising his arms with his phone held high. Nothing else matters to him at that moment. The people around him look at him as if he were crazy, wondering why this guy is screaming like a maniac in the middle of the crosswalk. Jinwoo starts crying with laughter and emotion. It is a bittersweet goodbye, but he finally feels free from his obsession. Before deleting everything, he decides to enter the chat one last time to show off a little in front of the veterans. He wants to leave through the front door. On the streets of Seoul, the confusion is total. Jinwoo and the pedestrians look around without understanding what is happening. Jinwoo looks at his phone, but something has changed in the atmosphere. Reality itself seems to be glitching. Suddenly, a giant system window appears floating above the buildings, confirming that he has cleared floor 100 of the tower. But the message does not stop there. Another window announces for everyone to see that the beta test has officially ended. Jinwoo looks up with a bead of sweat running down his face. wondering why the game interface is being projected into the real sky. Thousands of red scrolls begin falling from the sky, as if it were a cursed rain over the city. A student picks up one of the scrolls, curious about the strange object that has just landed in his hand. Right in front of him, a blue screen gives him a clear instruction: tear the summoning scroll. Thinking it is some kind of event, the boy and his friend decide to open it without hesitating for even a second. The young man's hands grip the red paper tightly, ready to see what is inside. Jinwoo realizes the danger and reaches out his hand, shouting desperately for him not to do it. But it is already too late. The scroll tears in half with a dry sound. A violent explosion of energy bursts into the student's face, throwing him backward as he screams in pain. The sky turns electric blue, and a notification declares that a new world is opening before them. Jinwoo is paralyzed in horror as chaos erupts around him with unstoppable force. From the smoke and flames emerge nightmare monsters, from giant stone golems to red-eyed beasts. In the middle of the destruction, Jinwoo cannot believe what he is seeing. The game he knew so well has become real and dead. A blinding light distracts him, just as something moving at full speed heads straight toward him. Panic takes over the city, and a girl screams at the top of her lungs, while buildings burn in the distance. A cargo truck crashes right into the crosswalk, and people start crying out for help. It is Jinwoo who lies unconscious on the asphalt, with his phone thrown a few meters away and blood staining the street. In his last moments of consciousness, he can only curse the game that led him to this tragic fate. As his vision fades, the screen of his broken phone ironically displays the message that a new world has begun. 3 years later, Jinwoo wakes up in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines and cables. The news reports South Korea's poor performance in the player leagues. His hand, still weak, moves slightly over the white sheet, while the television keeps talking about high-rank summon. Jinwoo's mother, who is peeling fruit, freezes when she sees that her son is finally reacting. The knife falls to the floor, and she screams for the doctor and Jinwoo's father, unable to contain her shock. Jinwoo has finally woken up. He opens his eyes with difficulty, with his head bandaged and a confused look. He sits up in bed while his parents watch him, still processing the miracle they have just witnessed. A close-up of his eye shows us his amazement. He has just discovered that 3 long years have passed since his accident. In front of him, a small stone creature waves hello. It is the Pebble Golem, his father's summon that confirms everything is real. Looking out the window, he sees how the summon helps his father carry packages, integrating the game into everyday life. On the news, Rachel appears as the current #1 in the world ranking, declaring that the 5 emperors are still waiting for God Jinwoo. Jinwoo processes the information from his bed, knowing perfectly well that the legendary name everyone is searching for belongs to him. Rachel appears on screen as a figure of absolute authority in this new world order that has been established. The group of the 5 most powerful players in the world is shown, and Jinwoo immediately recognizes his former companion. Suddenly, a system window appears in front of him asking if he wants to begin the tutorial, and he cannot help but laugh. Jinwoo's mother asks him to rest and says he does not have to start right away, but he has already made a decision. With a confident smile, Jinwoo knows he must adapt quickly because his knowledge of the game is his greatest weapon. Even though the world has changed and he is starting from zero, Jinwoo is convinced that he will become the best in the world again. Baek Jinwoo returns to his room after being discharged from the hospital. He starts investigating how everything changed. The news is full of reports about his former identity, God Jinwoo. It turns out that the entire game system, from PvP to dungeons, manifested in real life. 3 years have passed, and people already seem used to living alongside their own summon. Jinwoo rises from his chair, confident that the current players are nowhere near his level in terms of skill. Suddenly, a floating window asks if he is ready to begin the system tutorial. He accepts without hesitation, and the message confirms that the process is underway. He walks outside looking for a quiet place so he will not attract attention. He arrives at a park that is completely deserted, exactly what he needed to test his new abilities. The system gives him his starting rewards, 2 lower-grade summoning scrolls. Jinwoo grips them tightly, praying he gets something worthwhile so he does not start off on the wrong foot. He knows that if he gets trash summons from the start, being a heaven will not help much. The odds are awful. Even pulling a D rank from these scrolls is almost a 1% miracle. He closes his eyes and squeezes the red paper, begging for at least a useful tool to survive. He would settle for something E rank, as long as it is decent within its category. Without thinking any further, he tears the first scroll in half. He freezes for a second, waiting to see what kind of creature will manifest before him. Blue and pink energy begins bursting out forcefully from the torn paper. The glow is so intense that it ends up wrapping the entire place in a blinding flash. Jinwoo covers his face with his arm, surprised by the magnitude of the energy he just released. A system notification appears floating in the middle of the swirling light. From within the glow appears Ramba, a small blonde fairy stretching with a sleepy yawn. The protagonist is left speechless when he sees the rank floating above her. X, something he did not even know existed. The little creature rubs her eyes, still a little dazed from having been summoned so suddenly. When she looks at her hands, she realizes that she has truly been summoned again and panics. She floats through the air excitedly, wondering how much time has passed since the last time she was in this world. Jinwoo watches her with his mouth open, unable to believe that a summon can speak so fluently. He looks at her closely and asks directly if she is Ramba, the wind spirit he once knew. The fairy stops cold and stares at him, feeling that voice is far too familiar. Her face lights up completely when she recognizes her former master, the legendary god Jinwoo. She breaks down crying with pure joy and shoots straight toward him to cling to his face. She clings to his cheek with all her strength, sobbing as she tells him how much she missed him all these years. Jinwoo thinks back. He remembers that Ramba was only an E-rank summon in his beginner days. Despite her low rank, she was famous for being able to boost attack speed to an absurd degree. They spent so much time together in the beginning that he himself gave her that affectionate nickname. However, he remembers that the developers deleted her for being a bug that broke the balance of the game. The status window confirms his suspicions. She is a level 1 wind spirit, but now with an isolated X rank. He wonders what the hell it means to be classified as isolated. Ramba, with tears in her eyes, explains that she was taken to a strange place where she was trapped without being able to get out. The fairy gently touches his cheek, begging him never to let them be separated again. Jinwoo falls into thought and asks who exactly was responsible for locking her in that void. She gets nervous and starts sweating, trying to explain something that she does not seem to fully understand herself. Out of nowhere, Ramba starts screaming in pain while clutching her little head with her hands. She says it hurts so much that she cannot remember things clearly. It seems someone placed a magical restriction on her. Jinwoo watches her seriously and asks her to at least tell him whatever little she can remember. The fairy explains that she cannot say much, but confirms that she and others were isolated and could not leave no matter what. The protagonist is shocked to hear that there are more like her and asks how many isolated summons exist besides. Ramba estimates that there were probably around 10 entities in total, leaving Jinwoo lost in thought. He is left speechless when he realizes something shocking that cannot be just a coincidence. He remembers that there were exactly 10 summons he used that ended up disappearing after being classified as bug. Ramba adds that by tearing the scroll, he gives them a chance to return, though she finds it strange that she responded to a lower grade scroll. Jinwoo looks at the remains of the red scroll on the ground. Now he is sure that only he can react to them that way. He concludes that he is the only person in the world capable of pulling X-rank summons from such basic material. He thinks this must be his reward for conquering floor 100 of the tower, and he decides to use another lower-grade scroll immediately. A burst of blue energy manifests in front of him, announcing the arrival of a new creature. The system informs him that he has obtained an F-rank hairy gorilla. Ramba gets excited to see it, but Jinwoo feels the harsh blow of reality with such a low rank. He rubs his chin, thinking that he will have to tear through many more scrolls if he wants to recover the other X1s. He imagines how incredibly strong he would become if he managed to gather all of those isolated entities again. He asks Ramba to call him only Jinwoo from now on so he can stay unnoticed, leaving behind the title of God Jinwoo. He knows perfectly well that his player name is already legendary all over the world because of the 5 emperors. Despite his experience, he worries about how those 3 years of advantage the other players have will affect. He fears that if anyone discovers he has X ranks, he will automatically become the target of all kinds of envy and danger. He looks toward the trees in the park, where the atmosphere grows heavy before the system's imminent trial. Suddenly, a system window announces that it is time to move on to the next phase of the tutorial. The hairy gorilla lets out a threatening roar that scares little Ramba, who takes refuge flying close to her master. An intense blue light begins swirling on the ground, opening a dimensional crack right in front of them. The system message confirms that a basic beginner dungeon has been generated at that very moment. Jinwoo clenches his fist tightly. He conquered thousands of dungeons in the game, but he knows this is no longer a simulation. The portal shines with an imposing electric energy, reminding him that reality is far more dangerous than any software. He tries to calm his nerves, reminding himself that it is only a tutorial and that, technically, he will not have to fight hand-to-hand. He stands still in front of the entrance with his 2 summons, waiting for the system's final order to move forward. The system gives him the green light to enter. Jinwoo takes the first step toward the portal, determined to adapt to this new and chaotic reality. Baek Jinwoo enters the dungeon with a look that says, "I know exactly what I am doing." He does not look scared. If anything, he is analyzing the terrain. The place is a dark and somewhat eerie cave, but Jinwoo moves forward calmly while drops of water fall from the ceiling. A system window confirms that he is now officially in the beginner dungeon. He gets ready for what is coming. The system explains that to fight here, he needs to build a team of summons. A couple of cards appear floating in the air. It turns out that each team can have up to 5 slots. We see illustrations of an ice golem and a gargoyle as example. Jinwoo has to decide whom to place. The system suggests assigning Ramba and the hairy gorilla as his main team. Jinwoo knows that going in with only 2 seems crazy, but he has a plan. Most people would bring the full team of 5 to play it safe. We see a memory of Jinwoo in his room, in front of the computer. This guy spent years studying strategies and replaying levels in the game. He knows every detail by heart. He tested these tactics thousands of times in his previous life as a player. Without hesitation, Jinwoo presses the accept button on the floating screen. It is time to see if his theories work in the real world. Suddenly, Ramba appears flying with a lot of energy, and the hairy gorilla emerges with a deafening roar. Jinwoo looks at his 2 companions. Now, he has to remember what kind of monsters are waiting for him in this tutorial zone. A deep growl pulls him out of his thoughts. Jinwoo tenses up immediately when he notices a presence lurking in the shadow. A hungry gray wolf appears prowling nearby. The system marks his new objective: defeat it in order to escape the cave. Jinwoo identifies the beast. It is an F-rank gray wolf, the perfect basic enemy to test his strength. Suddenly, a warm light begins to surround Jinwoo's feet. Something is activating automatically. A golden shield forms around his body. The system notifies him that a protective barrier has been created for the player. Jinwoo recognizes the mechanic immediately. It is just like in the original game. As long as his summons are active, he is safe, in theory. But there is a very clear red warning. If the shield disappears and a monster hits him, Jinwoo will die instantly. Sweat starts running down his forehead. He realizes that this is not a game where you can hit restart. Here, a mistake is final. The wolf approaches slowly, its red eyes glowing and a dark energy emanating from its fur. Jinwoo points at the enemy and orders the hairy gorilla to attack with everything it has. The great ape lunges forward. The gorilla roars and tries to intimidate the wolf, but the difference in agility is obvious from the very first second. Jinwoo makes a face that says, "This is not going to work like this." The hairy gorilla is too slow to catch a predator that fast. As he expected, Jinwoo calls for Ramba to intervene. He needs an immediate tactical adjustment. Ramba waves her staff and activates wind pressure, a skill that drastically increases her allies' attack speed. The hairy gorilla is wrapped in gusts of green wind. It looks confused for a moment, feeling the new power in its muscles. The gorilla's eyes shine intensely. It is no longer the same slow ape from a moment ago. Now it is charged with energy. With a violent burst, the gorilla launches into attack at a speed the wolf cannot even follow with its eyes. Jinwoo clenches his fist with a satisfied smile. He knew that combining an X-rank fairy with an F-rank gorilla would give crazy results. The gray wolf growls, trying to react to the charge coming at it. The hunter has become the prey. Jinwoo notices that the creature seems even bigger and more dangerous than in the game. Reality always has an extra touch of terror. The gorilla throws a massive punch, confident that its brute strength will be enough to finish this. The 2 beasts clash in the middle of the cave. Jinwoo watches carefully, hoping no unexpected variable appears. The wolf leaps with a fierce roar, trying to bite the ape's neck in midair. The impact is brutal. We get a close-up of the wolf crashing into the gorilla's power under the buff's effects. The wolf manages to pin the hairy gorilla to the ground for an instant. The fight is getting dirtier than expected. Jinwoo shouts Ramba's name, making it clear that she must not stop supporting the gorilla for even a second. The little fairy makes a huge effort, waving her staff with all her strength to keep the buff active. The gorilla's fist lights up again with Ramba's wind. It prepares an uppercut loaded with all the accumulated pressure. The impact connects directly with the wolf's jaw, sending it flying with devastating force. The gray wolf crashes heavily onto the ground, completely defeated. Jinwoo's first real fight has been a total success. Ramba shouts that this is the final blow while casting a spell loaded with energy. She is not willing to give the wolf even a second to recover. A huge magic circle forms behind her. The little fairy is using all of her X-rank power to secure the victory. The hairy gorilla charges with a roar that echoes throughout the cave, propelled by Ramba's gusts of wind. The ape lands a brutal blow on the wolf, literally burying it into the stone ground. The force is so great that the shockwave throws dust everywhere. It is a rain of punches. The poor gray wolf has no chance against the combined speed and strength of this unusual team. Everything ends in a deathly silence inside the dungeon. The enemy has been pulverized, and the threat has completely disappeared. Baek Jinwoo and Ramba stare at the spot where the wolf was, catching their breath after the intense fight. Ramba looks a little exhausted from the effort. The gray wolf's body lies motionless on the ground. It is the first time Jinwoo has felt what it is like to defeat a real monster, outside the pixels of a game. The hairy gorilla beats its chest victoriously, celebrating that its master's training and strategy work. Ramba starts celebrating with jumps of joy, shouting that they won. Jinwoo, for his part, lets out a sigh of relief after surviving his first real encounter. The system notification appears confirming that the dungeon has been completed. As a reward, he receives 2 low-grade strength runes, his first loot in this new world. The scene changes to the imposing Jamsil Tower under an orange sky. It is the symbol of the New World Order, where Jinwoo is about to leave his mark. We see a pink-haired girl counting a huge stack of bills with a grin from ear to ear. It is obvious that business went very well for her today. She is Baek Jinwoo, Jinwoo's younger sister. She is excited because she just earned about 200,000 won in a single day of work. Ajin explains that when the world changed 3 years ago, she became a rune farmer. She clears low-level dungeons to sell runes to other players. It was a difficult decision to support the family after her brother's accident. She had to take risks and step into the dangerous world of players in order to survive. She was incredibly lucky to get a C-rank summon, a shadow elf, with only a 1% chance. Thanks to that, she has been able to generate a steady income. Suddenly, her phone rings in her bag. When she looks at the screen, she freezes upon seeing that it is a call from her brother Jinwoo. Ajin answers nervously, asking Jinwoo if he has already left the hospital. She cannot believe her brother is awake and already making calls. Jinwoo asks her if what their father said about her selling runes is true. Ajin is bothered by the term and clarifies that she is a professional collection player. She yells over the phone for him not to use such vulgar terms and to call her a rune farming player. Jinwoo is a little surprised by the intensity of his sister. Jinwoo apologizes for the scare and asks if she knows where the Summon Fusion Center is. He wants to start improving his team as soon as possible so he does not fall behind. Ajin replies that of course they are in the player zones. We see a world map with glowing points connecting the most important cities in the world. These zones were created around the towers of trials that appeared all over the world to centralize everything related to summon. Around these towers, all kinds of facilities were built. Fusion centers, enhancement centers, and special dungeons so players can do everything in one place. Ajin meets her brother in a cafe. She explains that in Korea there are only 2 towers, the Jamsil Tower in Seoul and the Hyundai Tower in Busan. Sitting across from each other, Jinwoo listens carefully to the details. He realizes that the world has changed far more than he imagined while he was in a coma. Jinwoo reflects on how logical it is to build all the facilities near the towers to help players progress efficiently. Ajin, curious, asks what rank his summons are. She assumes they must be E or F rank, the most common for someone who has just awake. Jinwoo lies and says yes, they are E and F. Ajin is genuinely happy, saying that even E rank is a difficult achievement to obtain. Jinwoo goes along with it with a slightly nervous smile, feeling guilty for hiding from her that he has an X-rank spirit. He tells her that he is going to need her help to get used to the system as quickly as possible. Ajin, feeling like the expert in the family, happily agrees to be his guide. She teases him a little and says she will even give him some money for expenses, since she now earns much more than he does. Jinwoo laughs internally and tells her that you never know how life will turn out. He hints that maybe one day he will become the best player in the world. Ajin takes it as a joke and mentions that people like Rachel or Xenos are chosen beings, geniuses who are on a completely different level. We get a close-up of Jinwoo's confident smile. He knows something she does not. He has 10 years of experience in a game that is now his new reality. Ajin gets up from the table and tells him all right, she will show him the way to the player zones so he can begin his real training. Jinwoo follows her with a determined expression. He is eager to see with his own eyes how these facilities work and begin his climb. The chapter ends with a majestic view of the tower lit up in the middle of the city, the next great challenge for Baek Jinwoo. Jamsil World at night. The enormous Tower of Trials rises above the buildings, glowing with a bluish light that dominates the entire city skyline. Jinwoo and Ajin walk through a park by the water. She's curious and asks her brother what kind of summon he managed to get a little while ago. When he replies that it is a wind fairy, Ajin stops dead in her tracks. She stares at him in surprise because she has never in her life heard of a summon with that name. She insists that he show it to her immediately, but Jinwoo is reluctant. He knows that bringing out an X-rank summon in the middle of a public park is not the best idea. To divert attention, Jinwoo tells her it would be better if she showed her summon first instead. Ajin accepts the challenge without hesitation. With a smug smile, Ajin begins channeling her energy. She warns her brother not to be too surprised when he sees what she has prepared. Jinwoo watches calmly as the magic circle glows in front of them. He wonders how impressive the summon his sister keeps bragging about will be. From the shadows emerges a C-rank shadow elf, dressed like an assassin and with glowing eyes. It is an imposing summon that in this world grants you almost noble-level status. Jinwoo reacts with total indifference. For someone who is the best player in the world, a C-rank is nothing more than sacrifice material to level up other creatures. Ajin gets annoyed by his cold reaction and complains that he does not understand the prestige that rank carries. She insists that C-rank summoners are the elite. Jinwoo ignores the tantrum and approaches the elf to greet her, trying to see if she has even the slightest bit of self-awareness. The shadow elf only looks at him in confusion, without reacting to his word. He waves his hand in front of the creature's face to see if it reacts, but he gets no response. Ajin looks at him as if he is doing something absurd. Ajin explains that summons cannot speak, they are just mute tools. Jinwoo freezes when he hears that. Jinwoo realizes that he has made a serious error in judgment by assuming all humanoids could talk. Sweat starts running down his forehead. He is completely shocked as he processes that communication is impossible for normal summons in this world. They cannot talk, he thinks with concern. He immediately remembers Ramba, who has not stopped talking and jumping on him since he met her. She is an absolute anomaly. Jinwoo tries to hide his surprise and asks Ajin if there truly is no summon at all that can speak. She confirms that such a thing is unheard of anywhere in the world. He understands that if anyone discovers Ramba can talk, his identity as God Jinwoo will be exposed immediately. He has to be extremely careful from now on. Ajin comes at him again, asking to see his fairy, but Jinwoo cuts her off sharply, saying he will do it later. He slips his hands into his pockets and starts walking. She yells that he is stingy for not showing her anything after she showed off her elf. Jinwoo ignores the shouting, focused on how to keep Ramba quiet. They head toward the commercial district, and Jinwoo asks her to just show him the way. The bright lights of the city center begin to surround them. Jinwoo is left speechless when he sees how much the area has changed. The neon lights and holograms have completely transformed the scenery. The place is full of people with their summons, like slimes and other small creatures. What used to be an amusement park is now a nerve center for players. Jinwoo asks if this is really the former Jamsil world. Ajin nods, explaining that the company demolished everything after the Tower of Trials appeared. She comments bitterly that the place stopped being a land of dreams and hopes. The Black Tower looms over them as a constant reminder of danger. Jinwoo, however, thinks it is much more exciting now. He imagines the chaos and adrenaline of dungeons swallowing up the amusement park. Ajin explains that the dungeons ended up taking over the place. Nobody would come here just for fun under these conditions. Jinwoo admits that seeing in real life what he only knew from the game makes his blood start to boil. He feels the urge to compete again. He stares at the glowing player signs, feeling nostalgic for his glory days on the servers. The atmosphere of competition is everywhere. He asks about the market area he sees in the distance. Ajin confirms that players can trade scrolls, runes, and anything else they need there. He remembers how he used to spend fortunes opening scrolls alongside his friend Baek. Those days of wasting money in the game feel distant now that he is broke. Ajin reminds him that he is still a beginner and suggests going to the academy run by headquarters to learn the basics. She looks at him with a bit of pity. Jinwoo rejects the idea immediately, saying he is fine as he is. He does not believe those instructors could teach him anything. Ajin worries about his overconfidence and asks if he is really okay. She fears her brother is losing touch with reality. He tells her to go on ahead because he wants to explore a little on his own. He says goodbye with a casual gesture as he parts ways with. Ajin stands there watching him walk away, with a bead of sweat on her temple. She cannot help feeling that something about him has changed drastically. She thinks her brother is acting very strangely, as if he were under a spell or simply dazed from having woken up so recently. She shouts that he should not overdo it and that she will be keeping an eye on him. Jinwoo only raises his hand without looking back, continuing his walk toward the shadow. Jinwoo finds a solitary, dark corner where nobody can see him. He makes sure the area is clear for his next move. He summons Ramba, who appears wrapped in an aura of light and petals, shouting excitedly about being out again. Her energy contrasts with the gloomy atmosphere of the alley. Before she can keep shouting, Jinwoo suddenly covers her mouth. Ramba stares with her eyes wide open, not understanding why she is being silenced like this. He frantically looks around to make sure no one has heard his fairy speak. "Ramba, you have to," he murmurs, preparing to explain the new survival rules. Jinwoo leans toward Ramba and explains in a serious voice that, from now on, she is strictly forbidden from speaking when they are outside a dungeon. The little fairy nods repeatedly, understanding the danger of drawing attention, while Jinwoo clarifies that she may only use her voice inside dungeons. While checking his phone in a crouch, Jinwoo mutters that in order to start clearing dungeons and progressing like before, he is going to need some starting cap. He pulls out his phone and checks the balance in his bank account, only to find a discouraging number, barely 12,501. He lets out a deep sigh, while the screen lights up his face in the darkness of the alley, feeling the weight of starting from the very bottom. With 50,001 bills floating through his mind alongside an old clock, he wonders how that can possibly be all his money and refuses to go back to part-time jobs. He grabs his head in frustration over his precarious financial situation, while Ramba watches him silently from the air. For a second, he considers asking his parents for help, but immediately throws the idea away as ridiculous given his family's situation. An image appears of Jinwoo's father carrying a heavy steel beam at a construction site. His parents have been killing themselves working 3 different jobs to keep them afloat. The scene shifts to Jinwoo's mother working in a kitchen, tired but trying to smile while handing over an order. Jinwoo feels that asking them for money would be sinking too low. He strengthens his resolve to start over on his own, staring fixedly at his phone screen with a grim expression. A golden crown shines as he remembers his fame as God Jinwoo, an elite player who reached the top without spending a single one on microtransactions. He convinces himself that if he could become the strongest in a game filled with pay-to-win mechanics without spending anything, he will be able to repeat that feat in reality. A fiery look appears in his eyes as he swears that he will climb the ranks on his own, no matter that life is real now. Suddenly, the phone beeps and a notification appears. 500,001 have been deposited into his account, leaving Jinwoo completely dumbfounded. Jinwoo stares at the screen in shock, wondering if it is some kind of bonus for new players or a system error. He opens the message that came with the deposit and reads that it is from his mother, who found out from Ajin that he is already trying to do his best after waking up. The message says that, knowing his personality, he would never ask for an allowance, so she went ahead and sent it first. Jinwoo whispers "Mom" in a trembling voice. A memory floods his mind, his mother sitting beside his hospital bed while he was in a coma, suffering silently because of the lack of money. His mother's hand gently strokes his lifeless arm in the hospital, a gesture of unconditional love that Jinwoo will never forget. The memory of his mother begging him to wake up healthy and strong blends with the image of her caressing his face, a moment overflowing with emotion. Jinwoo presses the phone against his chest and covers his eyes, feeling a mixture of gratitude and guilt for his family's sacrifice. He clenches his fist tightly, promising himself that he will definitely succeed this time in order to repay them for everything they have done. With a look full of conviction, he swears that he will make sure his whole family can live comfortably from now on. He stands up and looks at the digital supply shop, aware that the other players have a 3-year head start on him, and every second counts if he wants to catch up. Jinwoo knows that to grow he needs materials, and for that he has to enter dungeons immediately. Ramba accompanies him, ready for action. Without wasting any more time, Jinwoo buys 3 low-grade summoning scrolls and tears them open in the air to see what creatures he gets. The first scroll releases a bluish, slimy mass, an F-rank sludge lump, a basic summon that is somewhat unpleasant to look at. From the second scroll emerges a horned butterfly, also F-rank, a small butterfly with horns fluttering in the air. Finally, the third scroll reveals a much more useful creature, an E-rank poison lizard, a dark-skinned lizard that looks ready for combat. Jinwoo looks at the lizard with satisfaction. Getting an E-rank from basic scrolls is a sign of great luck in this system. He mentally calculates his odds and realizes that he has beaten that tiny 5% probability twice in just 5 attempts, counting Ramba. He glances at the sludge lump, which drips purple drool, and decides that he will get rid of the F-rank summons as soon as they stop being useful. Now his team consists of Fergo, Ramba, the lizard, the butterfly, and the sludge, a varied but functional lineup to start. With a confident smile, Jinwoo reviews the growth system. Collecting runes, hunting, and opening scrolls is something he can do all day without getting tired. His ambition grows as he visualizes floor 100 of the Tower of Trials, and the silhouettes of powerful enemies he will have to crush on his way to the top. With Ramba by his side and the goal clear in his mind, Jinwoo declares his first major objective. He will find every last missing X-rank. Baek Jinwoo walks determinedly through the city with Ramba on his shoulder. He feels that after all this time, it is finally time to take real action. First things first, he needs to find a dungeon, so he pulls out his phone and starts searching locations on Google. He remembers that in the game, it was just a matter of tapping the screen and done, but in the real world things do not seem that direct. He stares at the phone screen, wondering how access will actually work now that everything has become reality. Suddenly, his eyes open wide when he reads something he was not expecting. Something is wrong. Jinwoo arrives at the player zone and is left stunned by the number of people. It turns out he is not the only one trying to enter the game. He grips the phone tightly, trembling a little with frustration at what he has just discovered. Apparently, having a summon is not everything. A tutorial appears on the screen clearly saying that without an official player registration, no one can set foot inside a dungeon. He checks the map of the country and sees that gates are appearing everywhere, but without that official document, they are out of his reach for now. Even in an easy dungeon, the rule is strict. If you are an unlicensed newbie, the system automatically blocks your entry. When he tries to get close to the official facilities, government security stops him cold. Only registered people are allowed free access. Jinwoo sits on a bench completely deflated, with his head in his hands while Ramba flies beside him. All his plans have just gotten more complicated. He curses his bad luck. He wakes up at the exact moment the government decides to change the laws and get strict about admission. He feels a light tap on his arm. It is Ramba, trying to get his attention so he will not give up so quickly. The little fairy puts on her most determined face and encourages him in her own way, reminding him that she is there to support. Seeing her like that makes Jinwoo let out a small smile. At least he is not alone in this mess. He pats her on the head affectionately in thanks, but suddenly the phone in his pocket starts to vibrate. He looks at the screen and answers. It is Baek Ajin, his sister, calling him just as the sky starts to grow dark. Ajin greets him from the other end of the line, asking where he wandered off to. She is relaxing on her bed reading a book and asks what time he plans to come back, because their mother is already asking what to prepare for dinner. Jinwoo tells her he will take care of that, but takes the chance to ask whether she knew about the mandatory registration to enter dungeons. Ajin jumps up in surprise that her brother did not know something so basic. She asks whether he left it out on purpose or if he really forgot. She explains that the rule is new because too many people died trying to play hero, so the government had to step in by force. Ajin tells him that dungeon hotspots are complete madness, with guards watching every entrance so no one without permission can sneak in. Jinwoo admits it is pretty annoying. Jinwoo sighs, thinking that even registering is a hassle. He suspects the government just wants to control the number of players so the social system does not collapse. As he reflects, an image appears of desperate hands reaching for gold and power. If everyone chases easy money, the world would fall apart. Then Ajin mentions something else. There is a ranking list for the best players. Jinwoo grows thoughtful when he hears the term. She checks the world ranking, where names like Rachel Rose and William Zenos appear. She laments that her country does not even show up among the top positions. Ajin jokes that if the legendary Jinwoo god showed up, the country would rise like crazy. Jinwoo makes a funny face, breaking into a cold sweat at his sister's comment. He thanks her for the information and quickly hangs up, left alone with his thoughts in the middle of the lit-up city. He looks at the lights of the buildings and decides that today has already been enough. He has a lot to think about before tomorrow. Back at home, the sound of a pot boiling fills the kitchen while the family dinner is being prepared. His parents are in the kitchen. Jinwoo's mother is handling the food, while his father quietly reads the newspaper at the table. His father looks up from the paper, noticing something different in the atmosphere that night. The next morning, right at 6 o'clock, Jinwoo is already at the door ready to leave. His father is surprised to see him awake so early. He says he would rather leave early. His mother appears and insists that he at least take some rice balls for the road, but he assures her that he is fine. He bends down to tie his shoelaces tightly, preparing for whatever may be waiting for him outside. It is a new beginning. Before crossing the door, he stops for a second and looks at his parents, who are watching him from the hallway with some concern. Jinwoo gives them a sincere smile. He apologizes for being pathetic until now and thanks them for all their support. With one last "I'll be back," he leaves the house and closes the door, leaving his parents astonished by his change in attitude. His father scratches his head, complaining that his son got way too sentimental out of nowhere, though deep down he looks relieved. Jinwoo's mother remains staring toward the window, silently wondering if her son will be all right in such a dangerous world. Jinwoo leaves home while his mother, worried, asks him to be careful. The world has changed drastically. Now we are in an era where anyone, with a bit of luck, can become a player. But it is not all glory. Korea started drawing the world's attention for something quite dark. It had the highest death rate in dungeons, becoming a player guaranteed nothing. Mass death certificates were even issued. The problem was the overconfidence of people who had no idea what they were getting into. They called this phenomenon protagonist syndrome. Greed blinded many who only sought power and riches without preparing themselves. People lived under the illusion that they were the protagonists of a fantasy world, ignoring the real danger lurking in the shadow. They forced their way into dungeons and ended up dying inside, devoured by monsters that would not forgive even the slightest mistake. Jinwoo checks the news on his phone. The foreign press shows no mercy and points out that Korea is losing all its talent, sinking in the world player ranking. While waiting at the registration center, he reflects on how so many deaths were caused by simple delusions of grandeur. The place is packed with people waiting for their turn. Honestly, he finds it pathetic. He, who spent 10 years obsessed with this game, cannot believe that people were not even a little afraid of real death. Finally, it is his turn. He approaches the counter when they announce the next person in line, ready to submit his documents. He calmly hands in his application. The clerk receives it and confirms that he is already registered for the selection process. Curious, Jinwoo asks how many people can ultimately qualify to become official players in this recruitment round. The answer leaves him cold. Only 50 people out of the thousands there will earn the title. He knows it will not be easy with so much competition on his heels. He walks through the crowd, feeling the pressure of the hundreds of applicants behind him. If he cannot pass this test, his plans will fall apart. Jinwoo leaves the building and starts thinking about his old nickname, wondering whether he will ever again become that elite player everyone respects. He decides to go to a nearby cafe to observe the atmosphere a little and clear his mind. The place seems calm, full of people resting. At a nearby table, a man is reviewing piles of files. The competition is brutal. Out of all those faces, the government only wants the best 50. That man is Park Chang-seok from the evaluation committee. While having a drink, he thinks they should expand the search if they really want to find true talent. He complains that the higher-ups are delaying everything, but his complaints are interrupted by a sudden explosion that shakes the whole building. Panic erupts in the cafe. People scream and run while smoke covers everything. Park jumps up, not understanding what is happening. Through the dust and rubble, threatening figures appear. Someone has come specifically looking for Park Chang-seok. A man with a scar on his face introduces himself arrogantly. He is the leader of a criminal gang that has unfinished business with Park for killing his comrades. Behind the criminal appears a gigantic blood orc, an imposing summon thirsty for blood. Park mutters with contempt, immediately recognizing the psychopath standing in front of him. Suddenly, a huge wooden branch slams into the ground, shattering the tiles. The counterattack is about to begin. Park Chang-seok does not hold back and unleashes his power. He summons a massive treant and several fire turtles that surround the place, ready for battle. The civilians are terrified, trapped in the middle of the conflict between the gang and headquarters. Jinwoo watches from his table, wondering why this disaster had to happen right here. He listens to the murmurs of the people around him. Something about this situation does not add up, and he begins analyzing every detail with his expert eye. The confrontation is imminent. The two forces stare each other down, while the tension in the air becomes almost unbearable. The cafe is about to turn into a battlefield. Jinwoo breaks into a cold sweat as he watches everything spiral out of control. He wonders if he is really witnessing this madness in broad daylight. From a distance, the chaos looks total. People keep whispering, trying to understand how such a peaceful place became a nightmare in seconds. A couple trembles in fear, wondering if they are going to make it out alive. They recognize Park Chang-seok and know that whenever he appears to face gangs, things always end badly. Jinwoo keeps a serious expression, trying not to stand out while he processes the information he hears about Park's ruthless reputation. The gang leader smiles maliciously, confident in the destructive power of his blood orc. Park is outraged to see summons being used for mere criminal acts. Park shouts orders at the top of his lungs, declaring that this is a national emergency. He is furious at the audacity of these criminals. He orders everyone present to summon their creatures and activate their shields immediately to protect themselves from the imminent impact. There is no time to lose. The customers obey, and small creatures begin to appear, generating hexagonal energy barriers. The cafe fills with defensive lights as everyone ducks down. Jinwoo also takes cover and quietly calls for Ramba. He needs her ready, but without drawing the attention of the others. The little fairy appears confused, trying to understand what is happening in the middle of all the commotion and shield lights. He puts a finger to her lips, asking for absolute silence. He cannot risk anyone discovering his true identity or Ramba's rank right now. He whispers an apology, reminding her that they promised not to speak in front of strangers. Ramba nods reluctantly, though she clearly looks a little annoyed. The gang leader mocks Park, sarcastically calling him Mr. Justice. It is obvious that he does not respect the headquarters officer in the slightest. The blood orc lets out a fierce roar and charges with its giant axe, challenging Park to see how long he can withstand its assault. The real fight has just begun. Jinwoo stays crouched behind an overturned table, analyzing the situation cautiously. He knows that if he steps in without a plan, everything will turn into an unnecessary disaster. His eyes narrow as he watches the movements of the fighters. For now, he decides to stay on the sidelines and see how the battle unfolds. A fire butterfly flutters past before a massive explosion shakes the cafe, engulfing the area in flames and rubble. The blood orc emerges from the flames, imposing and apparently unharmed by the fire, ready to continue its slaughter. The gang leader lets out an arrogant laugh, mocking Park's efforts. "Is that all you've got?" he asks with a cynical smile. Park Chang-seok grits his teeth, sweating from the effort and tension of the fight. The situation is becoming critical for him. Jinwoo places his hand on the table, feeling his frustration grow. To his expert eyes, this fight is ridiculously clumsy and poorly executed. He watches Park being pushed backward. Jinwoo fears that if he loses, the gang will not hesitate for even a second to murder all the civilians present. He struggles internally over what to do. If he helps, he could get dragged into a political and legal mess he does not want right now. Beside him, the orc's axe shines with lethal light. The orc prepares for a devastating attack surrounded by reddish energy. Jinwoo knows time is running out. If he does nothing, he will die here before he even has the chance to live the quiet life he had planned. His survival instinct takes over. Jinwoo stands up and catches Park Chang-seok's attention. "Excuse me, it is dangerous, please fall back," he warns firmly, surprising the evaluator. Park is stunned by the interruption. Jinwoo coldly points out that the timing of his fire turtle's abilities is completely off. "Look at the buff handlers behind the blood orc," Jinwoo says while pointing toward the enemy reinforcements. Ramba watches from atop his head. He explains that a small creature is casting a fire resistance buff on the orc, nullifying Park's attack. Jinwoo makes it clear that attacking with fire while that shield is active is a waste of time. It is basic game logic that Park seems to have overlooked. Park processes the information quickly. Jinwoo noticed that every time the support used a skill, the orc's body turned redder, increasing its resistance. Understanding the enemy's strategy, Park prepares for a new tactical move, staring fixedly at the blood orc. The orc growls, sensing that something in the air has changed. The battle is about to take an unexpected turn. "Fire turtle," roars Park, following the guidance of the unknown young man standing beside him. The creature prepares to launch its attack. Now, Jinwoo orders. A scorching beam of fire streaks across the cracked floor, striking directly at the enemy's weak point. Park cannot believe it. Did it really work? The attack has been devastating and has broken the orc's defense. The gang leader explodes in fury, unable to understand how that boy knew the secret behind his buffs. Panic begins to show in his voice. The treant's enormous arm strikes down with brutal force, crushing everything in its path. The criminal realizes that his advantage has completely disappeared. A massive blaze engulfs the battlefield, incinerating the last remnants of the gang's resistance. Park's power is overwhelming when properly applied. Bursts of blue energy slam into the gang leader, who can barely remain standing before such a display of force. His end seems imminent. The criminal stumbles backward in fear, trying to protect himself with a small energy shield. "Wait a second," he begs as he realizes he has lost. Terrified, the gang leader screams that he will surrender, and that it was all his fault, begging for a mercy he does not deserve. Park watches him with an icy stare. There is not a trace of compassion on his face in response to the criminal's plea. The tree's roots wrap around the criminal, lifting him into the air. "Shut up," Park says as the man cries and begs for mercy. With terrifying coldness, Park reminds him that gang members are executed on the spot. The laws of this new world are ruthless. The criminal looks death in the eyes, tears running down his face as he realizes there is no escape. "And no," he whispers weak. Park snaps his fingers, giving the final order. "You knew that, did you not?" he says in a voice full of authority and severity. The roots tighten violently and pierce the man's body, splattering blood in an act of brutal and final justice. The gang leader has been executed. A brief silence falls over the cafe, while the earlier couple watches the scene with a mixture of horror and relief. The threat has been neutralized. Suddenly, the crowd erupts into cheers. People celebrate Park Chang-seok's victory, praising his strength and his merciless sense of duty. Jinwoo remains standing in the middle of the cries of jubilation, feeling out of place. People are celebrating a man's death as if it were a sporting event. "Headquarters is the best," some shout. Even though he was a criminal, Jinwoo cannot help feeling disturbed. They just watched someone die right in front of them and they are celebrating. It is a reality he struggles to accept. He reflects on how this world is no longer the one he knew. He realizes that to survive here, he will need far more determination and coldness than he imagined. Footsteps approach him over the floor covered in rubble. Someone is coming to speak with him amid the remains of the destroyed cafe. Park Chang-seok approaches Jinwoo with a kind smile, formally introducing himself as an assemblyman of player headquarters. He sincerely thanks him for his strategic help. He offers him a handshake as a sign of respect, giving him credit for making it possible to capture and neutralize the terrorist. Jinwoo responds modestly, downplaying his involvement. Park Chang-seok, still amazed by the young man's tactical precision, asks what guild he belongs to. Jinwoo, completely naturally, admits that he still has not officially registered with Central Headquarters. The revelation leaves Park in shock. He finds it incredible that someone without registration could identify such complex support skills with only a brief glance. Park asks for an ID document to verify who he is and process what happened. Jinwoo agrees without any problem, understanding that it is the standard procedure after an incident of such magnitude. Jinwoo hands over his identification, while Park explains that he will receive a reward, according to the regulations, once the background check is complete. With a relaxed smile and Ramba perched on his head, Jinwoo politely says goodbye. He seems satisfied to have resolved the situation peacefully. Park watches him walk away with a serious, analytical expression. There is something about that young man that does not quite add up and stirs his professional curiosity. The moment Jinwoo leaves the place, Park pulls out his phone and makes an urgent call to report the encounter. From inside the ruined cafe, Park orders the person on the other end to thoroughly investigate someone named Baek Jinwoo, after having sent over his personal data. Jinwoo walks down the street with his hands in his pockets, enjoying the brief calm, while Ramba rests peacefully on his hair. The sun shines brightly over the city, casting a clear light that contrasts with the darkness of the battle he has just witnessed. Jinwoo pulls out a cream bun to keep his promise to Ramba. He knows the little fairy has been holding back from speaking in public. Ramba's eyes light up with joy when she sees the sweet. Her excitement is obvious as she gets ready to enjoy her reward. Jinwoo smiles seeing how happy his summon is with something so simple. He thinks that, despite everything, she is very easy to please. Ramba hugs the piece of bread with delight. Jinwoo reflects on how lucky he is, since he has heard that other players often have constant arguments with their own summon. However, a doubtful expression clouds his face for a moment. He worries that his intervention today may bring unexpected problems in the near future. He remembers the imposing image of the blood orc wrapped in flames, a constant reminder that the dangers are real and everywhere. He pictures the clash between the treant and the orc. He knows that if he had not stepped in with his advice, many innocent people might have died in that cafe. Sitting on a bench in the park, Jinwoo sighs as he absorbs how much the world changed during his absence. He knows he cannot afford to delay his training and monster hunting any longer. He sets himself the top priority of gathering summoning scrolls as soon as possible. In his mind appears the silhouette of a formidable warrior, one of his short-term goals. His immediate targets are the training instructor and the flame dragon mage, low-rank summons, but essential for starting to level up safely. Beside him, Ramba lies belly up on the bench, completely satisfied and full after devouring the cream bun. Jinwoo stands up with a determined look. He feels that he has already rested enough and that it is time to take action. With a confident smile, Jinwoo declares that it is time to get moving. His new life as a player has just taken its first big step. The city keeps moving at its usual pace, while someone receives shocking news over the phone. Park Chang-seok cannot believe what he is hearing. It turns out Baek Jinwoo was in a coma for 3 years after a car accident. As he processes the information, he realizes that is the reason Jinwoo appears as an unregistered player. 3 years ago, the world changed completely, and the chaos caused countless accidents in the streets. Park Chang-seok is stunned to learn that Jinwoo applied for registration the moment he left the hospital. He reviews Baek Jinwoo's registration application with a mix of suspicion and genuine interest. Park looks over the papers in a cold sweat, realizing that he has something very important in his hands. He walks down the street lost in thought until someone asks him if something is wrong. Over the phone, Park announces that this month he will personally join the evaluation committee without giving any further explanation. Park ends the call while reflecting on the incredible adaptability Jinwoo has shown. He stares at his phone with an ambitious smile, convinced that this boy could be a valuable asset. The scene shifts to inside the registration headquarters, where everything is ready for the upcoming test. Baek Jinwoo arrives at the place with steady steps, feeling Ramba's gaze as she stays hidden beside him. The hallway is packed with applicants anxiously waiting for their turn at training. Jinwoo observes the competition. Many brought their summons and are determined to become official players. Now seated in the auditorium, Jinwoo relaxes with his arms crossed while Ramba flutters beside. Firm footsteps can be heard. The staff begin moving to start the briefing session. Jinwoo notices the talk is about to begin and prepares himself for whatever comes next. Suddenly, Jinwoo opens his eyes wide when he recognizes someone familiar on the stage. It is Park Chang-seok, who formally introduces himself to everyone as a member of the Central Headquarters Evaluation Committee. Soon after, the two meet in a private room where Park asks if he is surprised to see him there. They sit down to talk, and Park jokes that it seems they are destined to meet. Park points to a screen showing diagrams of summon combinations that usually appear on the written exam. Jinwoo watches the screen carefully, while Ramba rests quietly on his head. Ramba seems a little bored by all the technical explanation and yawns on top of Jinwoo's hair. Jinwoo gets irritated when he realizes that strategy is exactly the same one he posted years ago on an internet forum. Despite his inner annoyance, he tells Park with a forced smile that the training was not bad at all. Park grows serious and mentions that he wants to talk about the reward he promised last time. Before getting into details, Park admits there is something important he needs to ask him directly. He leans forward, clasps his hands, and asks Jinwoo if by any chance he is a gamer. Jinwoo stays calm and repeats the term curiously, pretending not to know exactly what he means. It is explained that a gamer is someone who played Battle of Summoners before the world changed. Jinwoo reflects in silence. He knows it is suspicious to know so many tricks of the game without ever having been an official player. Park looks at him impatiently waiting for an answer, so Jinwoo finally admits that yes, he did play a little. Jinwoo thinks fast and decides to hide the fact that he was a 10-year veteran, so they do not discover who he really is. Keeping a neutral expression, he tells Park that he only played for about a year. Park suddenly jumps to his feet and slams the table in excitement, asking if he is serious. Jinwoo gets a little nervous at the exaggerated reaction and wonders if he lied too low. To Park, it is incredible that someone managed to last a whole year in a game that almost nobody played anymore. Park sweats with excitement, thinking that most of the current top players did not even last 6 months in that game. After calming down a little, Park apologizes and offers him 2 kinds of rewards so he can choose whichever he prefers. He raises one finger to explain the first option. Use his authority to approve his player registration immediately. Park Chang-seok continues with his offers, mentioning that the first option includes a guaranteed job position at the Central Committee headquarters. Baek Jinwoo listens to the proposal with indifference while holding his chin, not looking very impressed by the security of a fixed job. The second option is a cash prize of 5 million won, which Jinwoo sees as a far too obvious choice for someone in his situation. Park is convinced Jinwoo will accept the job immediately, but the boy interrupts him, saying he would rather take the money. The evaluator is left speechless by the unexpected answer, showing an expression of total disbelief at the rejection of such an important position. Park tries to convince him by saying registration usually takes a long time, but Jinwoo thanks him for the concern and remains firm in his decision. Jinwoo places his hand on the table with determination, making it clear that he can handle the registration process on his own without extra help. He slings his backpack over his shoulder and leaves, commenting that he is in a hurry to keep tracking summons and cannot waste more time. Soon after, he arrives at the play zone, where a blue portal flickers in front of him, while Ramba and Fergo wait ready to enter action. An employee confirms Jinwoo's identity before allowing him through the portal to formally begin the practical evaluation. She explains that the test consists of clearing a dungeon as fast as possible, and this time, it is the Tuesday dungeon's turn. From a distance, Park Chang-seok watches the scene with his arms crossed, still processing the young man's independent attitude. Park cannot get over the fact that Jinwoo rejected a job offer as generous as the one he placed on the table. He stares straight ahead with a bead of sweat on his temple, feeling that there is something very different about this applicant compared to the other. He reviews reports that make it clear Jinwoo possesses knowledge about runes and summons far deeper than any other expert. Eugia cries with emotion when she sees the results on the paper, shouting that a talent of this caliber has finally appeared in Korea. Park is thrown off by the staff's hysterical reaction and begins wondering if the boy is really as incredible as they say. He bites his thumb thoughtfully, realizing that maybe he should have offered even better terms to make sure he recruited Jinwoo. The staff informs him that the explanation is over, and that he already has permission to cross the portal and begin the test. Jinwoo takes the first step into the portal's bright light, ready to demonstrate his true strength on the battlefield. He stops at the entrance beside his summons, challenging the dungeon with a look full of certainty and confidence. A burst of energy surrounds Jinwoo and Furgo as they are teleported into the battle zone. A system message appears warning that the room is filled with highly toxic slimes, and that they must defeat them to escape. Ramba eagerly gets ready to start applying her attack buffs to Furgo without wasting a second. Furgo roars in fury as he receives the speed boosts, with numerical improvement indicators floating around him. It is explained that the Flame Cat dungeon is a true labyrinth, designed to confuse anyone before they reach the boss. It shows how beginners usually get lost among the walls of the map, wasting time until the clock hits 0. Jinwoo flashes a superior smile, knowing perfectly well that this place holds no secrets for a veteran like he runs at full speed with his companions, ordering them to ignore the slow slimes because he knows the route by heart. After turning down a dark corridor, Jinwoo stops when he spots the entrance to the final boss room right in front of him. He immediately rushes toward the shortcut, confident that his knowledge of the hidden paths will take them straight to victory. Suddenly, the system's red alarms go off to announce the imminent appearance of a powerful boss monster. Jinwoo looks ahead with curiosity, commenting that this is the first time he has seen one of these enemies so close. The king slime emerges as a huge viscous mass with a crown, dominating the whole room with its imposing presence. Without hesitation, Jinwoo points at the enemy and orders Furgo to go all out and finish the test quickly. The gorilla leaps into the air, concentrating all his brute strength to deliver a devastating blow against the boss's core. The impact is so powerful that the king slime's entire mass is completely deformed under the overwhelming force of Furgo's attack. Jinwoo watches the result with his arms crossed, confirming that Ramba's buffs are truly an unfair advantage. While Ramba celebrates happily, Jinwoo thinks about how unstoppable that speed buff would be on a higher rank summon. The system confirms the defeat of the boss monster, and the dungeon's dense atmosphere begins to fade gradually. The final time appears as 5 minutes and 32 seconds, which Jinwoo considers quite slow compared to his past as Jinuga. However, the system screens explode with an unbelievable message. Jinwoo has just broken the all-time record of South Korea. Baek Jinwoo watches the system screen in surprise as it announces the delivery of an additional reward: 2 low-grade polishing aids. In the monitoring room, the employees are left speechless as the monitors flicker with the update of a new record. One of the workers, her hair tied back in a ponytail, exclaims in amazement that clearing a low-level dungeon in 5 minutes is an enormous improvement. Baek Jinwoo's player profile appears on the main headquarters screen, showing his nationality as the Republic of Korea. The technical team exchange confused looks, admitting that they have never heard that name in elite circle. They realize that an unranked player has just taken first place in the national ranking, something completely unheard of until now. In a private meeting room, Park Chang-seok presides over the table, while Jinwoo's information is projected on the wall behind him. The employee reviews the data in amazement, commenting that this boy's performance is seriously impressive for someone new. Park Chang-seok cannot hide his excitement and rubs his hands together, convinced that Baek Jinwoo is a nationally valuable asset. Park slams the table hard and declares that they must secure this talent by any means necessary before someone else takes him. He suggests registering Jinwoo as a player immediately, even skipping the usual player versus player combat test. The screen shows a comparison of time attack rankings, divided between national territory and the global rank. It is mentioned that Korea's current number 1 is Kang Jin-ho, with a time of 6 minutes and 41 seconds. On the other hand, the top of the world is held by Rachel, with an impressive record of only 2 minutes and 25 seconds. Park wonders whether it really makes sense to make Jinwoo compete in PvP when he already shattered the national speed record. With an air of authority, Park Chang-seok states that people with such overwhelming talent deserve special and preferential treatment. The imposing facade of the headquarters building rises under a clear sky, symbolizing the weight of the organization. As he walks down the street, Jinwoo grows thoughtful upon learning that 5 minutes is his country's highest record, questioning Korea's level. Park Chang-seok personally comes out to look for Jinwoo, shouting his name at the top of his lungs in the middle of the sidewalk. Overflowing with energy and booming laughter, he runs toward the young man to express how eager he was to meet. Once in front of him, he enthusiastically asks how he was able to beat the national record on his very first try. Jinwoo scratches the back of his neck modestly, thinking to himself that being praised for that is like congratulating a fish for knowing how to swim. Without wasting time, Park pulls out a card and hands it to Jinwoo with a decisive gesture. It is his official player license. He has been legally registered in the system immediately and under special conditions. Park assures him that he has nothing left to prove, while Jinwoo calmly examines his new player ID. The evaluator looks a little hesitant, clasping his hands together as he prepares to make a delicate request. Carefully, he asks Jinwoo whether he could explain the exact method or strategy he used to break the national record. Jinwoo holds the license before his eyes, seriously considering the proposal the bearded man has just made. He knows that if he shares his knowledge, the overall level of Korea's players would skyrocket in very little time. He imagines a path of hope, where he lives surrounded by luxury, money, and fame thanks to the state's full support. On the other hand, he pictures a path of despair, where he is captured and squeezed dry by the authorities for every bit of information. He lets out a sigh at the complexity of the situation, maintaining a neutral expression while weighing his options. Park Chang-seok realizes his question was too direct and immediately apologizes for his lack of manner. With a regretful gesture, Park admits that it was rude to ask something so private from a stranger. He clenches his fist tightly, while explaining that strategy guides are extremely sensitive and private information among players. His voice turns serious as he confesses that Korea is desperate to find talents who can save the country's prestige. Seeing how sincere he is, Jinwoo comes to the conclusion that Park Chang-seok does not seem to be a bad person after all. He thinks positively of the fact that Park sent the promised money immediately and seems like someone with a decent personality. Jinwoo lets out a small smile, thinking that maybe he could be the one who ends up using the country for his own purposes. Park suggests finding a more private place where they can talk calmly away from the eyes of curious passersby. They move inside an elegant, bright cafe surrounded by plants and a very relaxed atmosphere. Sitting in front of his coffee, Park formally asks for his help, declaring that Central Headquarters desperately needs his great knowledge. Baek Jinwoo narrows his eyes when he discovers Park has been investigating his past, including the 3 years he spent bedridden in a hospital. Park Chang-seok apologizes at once, explaining that he has to be cautious since a highly skilled, unregistered player could be part of a criminal gang. With his arms crossed and a stern look, Jinwoo warns him never to investigate his private life again, to which Park nods seriously. As he watches Jinwoo drink coffee with complete calm, Park thinks to himself that the young man seems very aware of his own value. Jinwoo sets the cup on the table and gets straight to the point, asking what real benefit he would get from cooperating directly with the government. The young man tilts his head curiously when Park mentions that the main benefit will be receiving his personal and direct support. Laughing, Park Chang-seok boasts about his status, claiming that his position within Central Headquarters is high enough to move influence. A comedic illustration shows Park standing in first place on a podium under a spotlight, while Jinwoo comes to the conclusion that the man basically acts like a politician. Park clenches his fists on the table and promises Jinwoo to provide all the support within the reach of his authority. Jinwoo remains thoughtful, doubting the offer since the rewards are vague and Park cannot simply hand out state funds however he wants. The young man taps the table rhythmically with his finger before making a counterproposal that changes the terms of the negotiation. Jinwoo breaks the silence by asking for a trial period of only 1 month, leaving Park Chang-seok completely bewildered by how short the time is. Jinwoo proposes using that month to grow stronger while receiving Park's support, promising to return the benefits if the collaboration does not bear fruit. Park listens carefully while a bead of sweat runs down his temple, realizing that the young man is setting very bold conditions on the table. A smile spreads across Park's bearded face as he understands that, basically, Jinwoo wants to turn him into his personal assistant for the next few weeks. After a brief moment of reflection, Park places his hand on the table and accepts the deal, acknowledging that the proposal is as bold as it is interesting. In the warm atmosphere of the cafe, both men firmly shake hands, sealing an alliance that promises to change the balance of power in Korea. A steaming cup of coffee on the table marks the beginning of a serious conversation. Baek Jinwoo gets straight to the point, saying he has something to ask. Jinwoo stares directly at the man in front of him and asks him not to go around spreading the news of his new record. Park Hyungbo listens as Jinwoo explains that he is doing it for his own safety. Park Hyungbo tries to assure him that headquarters can protect him, but Jinwoo cuts him off immediately. Jinwoo tells him the truth to his face. If headquarters cannot even control a gang, there is no way they can protect someone with talent. Seeing that Jinwoo is no fool, Park Hyungbo clenches his fist on the table and agrees that he will do his best to contain the information. Park warns that some leaks will be unavoidable over time. Jinwoo stands up and replies that this is enough. Jinwoo says goodbye and leaves the place under Park Hyungbo's gaze. Walking down the street, Jinwoo checks his phone, relieved that he managed to get the assemblyman to keep quiet for now. Jinwoo smiles as he pulls out his phone to check the rewards he got a little while ago. He slides his finger across a holographic interface glowing in front of him. In his inventory appear 3 high-grade summoning scrolls and 2 low-grade polishers. He is surprised by the level of the prizes. Jinwoo analyzes that these items are unique rewards for having completed the dungeon for the first time. He starts wondering whether he should use them right away or whether it would be better to sell them to get some cash. Suddenly, he remembers that he has access to a special tool for checking prices. He opens the Player Web, an app that only registered players can use to trade. He remembers that Park Hyungbo strongly recommended it when he installed it for him a little while ago. He enters the market section to see how much his scrolls are going for. Jinwoo is left stunned, staring at the screen of his phone in the middle of the street. His eyes open wide when he sees the numbers displayed in the app. The screen shows that a single high-grade scroll costs a staggering 3 million won. Jinwoo grabs his head, unable to believe it. He basically earned 900,000 won from a raid that lasted barely 5 minutes. He knows this is only the beginning and that he will earn much more as his stats go up. He pictures his parents and his sister, Baek Jinwoo, surrounded by money. He promises himself that they will never have to worry about expenses again. He decides that he will sell the expensive scrolls to buy a large quantity of low-grade scrolls and try his luck. While browsing the market, something catches his attention and he stops to check the listing. He wonders why low-grade scrolls cost exactly 5,000 won, even though there are a lot of people selling them. He decides to call someone to clear up the doubt. The call connects and Jinwoo waits for the other side to answer. Baek Jinwoo answers the phone from her house, asking him what is going on. She is shown sitting on her couch reading a book. Ajin explains with a smile that it is headquarters that buys all those scrolls. Jinwoo is left confused, wondering why headquarters would do such a thing. She settles into the sofa and tells him that the government buys them in bulk with tax money to support rankers and maintain a base price. Since people can always sell them to headquarters, nobody lowers their prices and they prefer to wait. Ajin adds a key detail. It is an old policy, and it will probably be cancelled soon because they already have too many stockpiles. Jinwoo smiles when he hears the news, thanks his sister, and hangs up immediately. With a new idea in mind, Jinwoo puts away his phone, determined to take advantage of the situation. Jinwoo returns to the office, and Park Hyunbo welcomes him with open arms and a huge grin. Park jokes that Jinwoo must have already missed him if he came back so quickly. Jinwoo only looks at him with a tired expression. The assemblyman clasps his hands together and asks if he needs something in particular. Park is surprised when Jinwoo tells him that he wants to get low-grade scrolls instead of high or mid-rank ones. Jinwoo looks at him seriously and replies that he wants as many as he can possibly get. Park Hyunbo strokes his beard, processing the enormous number of scrolls that Baek Jinwoo has just asked for. Park explains that they receive 50,000 scrolls a day, so giving him some is not a problem, but he warns him not to go around reselling them. Jinwoo replies that it is not about that. If they are gathering dust in the market, he might as well use them himself. The assemblyman glances at him from the corner of his eye, realizing that the kid already has a well-laid plan in his head. Jinwoo stays calm. He knows his way of playing is totally different from that of the other rank. Park raises one finger and accepts the deal, but sets one condition. A small chibi version of Jinwoo appears with a question mark above his head. Park Hyunbo leans forward and asks him for a sample of valuable information as an advance. He reminds him that he is an assemblyman elected by the people and needs to justify his move. Park explains that if he gets caught giving away scrolls bought with tax money, people will lose all trust in him. Jinwoo listens carefully while watching the man. Park's image is reflected in a steaming cup of coffee as he proposes the exchange. Strategic information for a mountain of low-grade scroll. Jinwoo lets out a slight half-smile when he realizes the guy is not going to hand anything over for free. He wants to secure a couple of safety nets. Jinwoo leans back in his chair and agrees. If he gives him good information, Park will treat it with the value it deserves. Jinwoo gets to work and begins explaining something called achievement chaining. Park listens with a face that says he understands nothing. An infographic shows how the system works. Breaking a dungeon's national record grants 3 high-grade scrolls. A chibi Park celebrates with the prizes. Jinwoo, now wearing a king's crown in chibi form, explains that when another player breaks that new record, the reward activates again. Several chibis appear passing scrolls around as if it were a relay race. The idea is for players to take turns lowering the record by just 1 second each time, thus maximizing the total number of rewards. A bunch of banknotes and documents fly through the air, while Jinwoo explains that the more times they do it, the more Korea's national power will rise. Park grows thoughtful, recognizing that this is a tactic that has already been used before among the high ranks. Park mentions that most rankers have already claimed those rewards once, so he does not think there will be problems. Jinwoo looks straight at him, getting ready to drop the bomb. Jinwoo offers him the complete strategy for the Tuesday dungeon. Park is so shocked he even gives a little jump. Park claps enthusiastically, saying he knew it. He was really expecting something like this. Jinwoo, with an expressionless face, mentions that it is a method used by the 5 emperors. Park appears with sparkling eyes, begging him for the detail. Park Hyunbo bursts into laughter when Jinwoo assures him that with this method, anyone will be able to clear the dungeon in just 3 minutes. 3 minutes is insane. Jinwoo raises his hand with his fingers spread to start talking business. It is time to put a price on the information. With a confident smile, Jinwoo asks for 50 high-grade scrolls, in addition to what they had already agreed on earlier. Park Hyunbo nearly chokes on his coffee and slams the table, shouting, 150 million won. Jinwoo does not even flinch and replies that, honestly, it is cheap. Jinwoo crosses his arms and explains that the strategy works even in high-level dungeons. The achievement rewards alone they would get are worth billions. Park goes silent for a second, looking downward and analyzing the potential benefits. He knows the kid is right. Park Hyungbo nods with a huge smile and accepts the deal. If the information turns out to be true, he will transfer the 150 million immediately. Jinwoo smiles in satisfaction. Park also commits to giving him 10,000 low-grade scrolls every day. Without a doubt, a perfect deal. Scene change to sunset in front of a large headquarters building. A group of uniformed agents is gathered on the training field. Park Hyungbo appears laughing in front of his men. He explains that he called them over right at quitting time because he wants to test something important. One of the agents, a dark-haired guy, comments with a smile that if the assemblyman is the one calling them, then it is surely no ordinary test. Park asks them whether they heard that someone broke the Tuesday dungeon record not long ago. The agents nod curiously. In Chibai version, Park says that he got a really good strategy from overseas and already tested it with Baek Jinwoo, getting incredible results. The agents are left in shock, finally understanding why they were told not to go around talking about anything. Park Hyungbo lets out a confident chuckle while his men look at him expectantly. It is obvious they are ready for action. Under the setting sun, Park announces with determination that they are going to completely destroy the Tuesday dungeon record. The image of the key piece for this plan appears, the pied Komodo. It is a bluish lizard with yellow spots that glows with energy. The agents stare in confusion. They cannot believe that creature is the secret to success. Pied Komodo, they ask in disbelief. A stat sheet for the summon is shown. B rank, 170 cm tall. It is described as a versatile hybrid capable of attacking and tanking, although most players do not see anything special about it. An agent appears with a disappointed face next to a small pied Komodo. A lot of people treat it like trash because leveling it up is a headache and its stats are mediocre. However, there is something crucial that the other players do not know about this creature. A huge blast of purple energy is shown crashing into the ground. The secret is that the pied Komodo's favorite food is giant slimes. In Chibai form, the lizard starts eating one with a fork and knife. Simply letting it loose in the dungeon makes it hunt slimes on its own and clear everything incredibly fast. The sun sets behind headquarters skyscrapers, bathing the modern building in an intense orange glow at the end of the day. On the system screens, the new Tuesday dungeon records keep flashing nonstop. The clear time has dropped dramatically to just over 5 minutes. Two headquarters agents are ecstatic, celebrating with their fists raised that they reached the boss room in under 4 minutes thanks to the new strategy. This guy is the MVP, they shout excitedly from the spectator seats. In the distance, the group of agents toss the pied Komodo into the air like a trophy, while Park Hyungbo watches, with a satisfied smile from the side. The men are already talking about setting speed runes to go for the world record. A few days later, the assemblyman's office is silent, with daylight filtering through the large window. A news article on screen announces the operation's resounding success. Korea has managed to break consecutive records in the Tuesday dungeon. The news headline highlights that the assemblyman obtained valuable information from overseas at low cost, publicly crediting him for the country's incredible progress. Park Hyungbo leans on his desk with his hands clasped, processing the results. Now he is sure that Baek Jinwoo is worth far more than any average one-year player. The assemblyman's eyes narrow with a determined look. He has already made a firm decision about how to handle his strategic relationship with the young man. Meanwhile, at a city overlook, Jinwoo listens carefully while a tiny hand points insistently into the air. But here comes the important part, his companion warns. Ramba Windfairy explains seriously that, as quarantined X-rank summons, there is only a single copy of each of them in the entire system. Jinwoo opens his mouth wide, shouting in surprise at the revelation that they are unique beings. Ramba simply shrugs, admitting that she does not know the reason behind that restriction either. Jinwoo lets out a heavy sigh as he processes the information. He is the only one capable of summoning those unique beings among tens of thousands of summon types. Each of those common versions has 800 million copies in circulation. Close-up of his eye reflects the chilling success rate, 0.0001%. The pressure of having to pull the only X version out of 800 million possibilities makes him break into a cold sweat. Jinwoo drops to the ground, completely deflated by the overwhelming statistic. Winning the lottery several times in a row would be easier than this, he mutters with an expression of total defeat. Ramba flies over to him and tries to cheer him up by patting him on the shoulder, telling him not to worry so much about the number. She explains that once he summons a being, that specific copy will not appear again unless he sells it. If he were to summon all 800 million horn larvae, they would simply stop appearing from his scroll. Jinwoo lowers his gaze in silence, processing the magnitude of the work ahead of him. Even though there is logic behind the system, the road still feels unbelievably heavy. Jinwoo analyzes his options with a vacant stare, wondering for a moment whether it would not be better to start opening mid-grade scrolls direct. However, when he looks at the clear sky above the park, he dismisses the idea immediately. Mid-grade ones are expensive, and there are very few available on the market. It is an inefficient path. He gets to his feet with an expression of pure determination, accepting that, even if the odds are brutal, he has to face them. With an energetic motion, Jinwoo tears open a bright blue scroll while Ramba flutters behind him with a smile. "I have no choice but to keep going forward," he shouts with renewed strength. Over the city skyline at sunset, the sound of scrolls tearing echoes loudly. Ramba cheers on her summoner with all her strength, while Jinwoo prays to the heavens that the summon he needs will finally appear. Dusk falls over the city, marking the end of another exhausting day. Baek Jinwoo is sprawled out on the bed, feeling like he is dying from exhaustion. His whole body feels heavy. It turns out the guy spent 2 weeks breaking 140,000 scrolls nonstop to strengthen his summon. Meanwhile, Ramba can only think about eating cream bread. Jinwoo is sweating like crazy, completely drained by the mental strain of so much grinding. He had to rent a room near the player zone, just so he could keep fusing summons day and night without interruptions. He gets up with determination. He knows he cannot live off his parents forever if he wants to become a great summoner. Ramba jumps happily on the pillow, demanding her cream bread as a reward for all the hard work. They arrive at the Fusion Center, an imposing building that used to be a luxury hotel in the past. The place is full of people and activity. Many buildings in the city completely changed their purpose after the system arrived. Jinwoo remembers that this place used to be famous for its buffet, but now it is the key point for improving summons. He walks over to one of the automatic machines to manage his entry. He has to wait for his turn, with ticket number 125 in his hand. Ramba is a little anxious and warns him not to mess things up when choosing. He answers her with total confidence. His number is announced on the screen. It is finally time to enter the fusion room. They find themselves in front of a high-tech platform with a glowing magic circle in the center. Jinwoo tells Ramba that today the process also depends on her if it is going to succeed. He gets to work on the holographic terminal to begin setting up the fusion. He registers his wind fairy as the main base. The system recognizes the summon immediately. Without thinking twice, he presses the confirmation button to spend his resources. A burst of light envelops Ramba, while thousands of F-rank fire lizards are sacrificed to give her experience. The light is so intense that Jinwoo can barely look. The fusion finally comes to an end. Ramba manages to reach level 21, and the system notifies that her intelligence has increased. Jinwoo claps, but inside he is frustrated. He sacrificed 140,000 units and barely gained a handful of levels. Ramba strikes a proud pose, asking if she looks super strong now. He plays along, even though he knows the road to level 100 will be endless. A few days later, the scene changes to a modern government office building. Baek, the assistant, is working at full speed in front of his computer. Assemblyman Lim Hee-soo walks in overflowing with confidence. Everything seems to be going according to his plan today. Lim Hee-soo is determined to bet everything on Baek Jinwoo to secure his political future. He asks his assistant what the young man is plotting right now. Baek tells him that Jinwoo keeps opening scrolls nonstop, even the low-rank ones that nobody wants. It turns out Jinwoo asked for 150 million just to buy more trash. The assemblyman cannot believe it. Baek mentions that the boy also wanted a discount, but that the audit office is watching them because of excessive spending. Lim Hee-soo reflects on why someone would reinvest such a huge sum in scrolls that nobody buys. Convinced that there is a hidden reason, the assemblyman orders that they be sold to him at half price. At half price, Baek gets agitated, worried about the special treatment and the possible consequences if they get caught. But Lim Hee-soo tells him not to worry. He has a smile that says it all. He imagines Jinwoo turned into Korea's national hero, with himself as his great mentor and protector. He knows that when the world finds out about his support, his popularity will rise through the roof. He can already see himself in glory. He slams the table and orders his assistant to simply do what he asked for now. He gives him a serious look, stressing that this is of utmost importance. Only a very small circle of people is allowed to know about this secret agreement, no exceptions. And while they conspire, Jinwoo keeps doing his thing, sitting on the floor tearing scroll after scroll. He is already on number 1558. Jinwoo wonders how much longer they are going to keep doing this. Ramba is at her limit and says she cannot even feel her hands anymore from all the effort. Suddenly, the sound of firm footsteps interrupts his grinding session. Jinwoo lifts his gaze and finds himself face to face with a woman who leaves him completely bewildered. She greets him naturally. She introduces herself as Eugia from Central Headquarters and tells him that it is a pleasure to finally meet him in person. Jinwoo gets nervous when he realizes he was caught in the middle of a disaster of used scrolls. He tries to play down the chaos. She explains that she is there to talk about the bulk purchase of scrolls that he negotiated with the assemblyman. Eugia mentions that they have been reviewing his case, and considering his recent contributions, they have made a decision. Big news, she offers him all the scrolls at half price. Jinwoo feels like she is practically an angel fallen from heaven. And it does not stop there. She assures him that there are more benefits on the way to support him. She informs him that they have decided to assign him an extra budget of 100 million won just for technical support and talent. The only condition is that he keep this entire arrangement under strict confidentiality to avoid internal problems. Jinwoo accepts immediately, although Jia notices that the boy is blushing quite a bit from the excitement of receiving so much money. She says goodbye kindly, assuming that he must have many important things to do with his summons. Jinwoo watches her leave while processing the enormous support the assemblyman is placing on his shoulders. He feels that he has to produce results soon to repay the favor, so he decides it is time to pull out some X ranks once and for all. Time passes and Jinwoo keeps being surrounded by the remains of red scrolls in an endless opening session. Ramba is already traumatized. She says she is going to have nightmares just from the sound of paper tearing. Despite the hours, he keeps getting only F-rank trash, like white snakes and giant beetles. Jinwoo grows desperate. He feels that if he does not pull something good now, he is going to go crazy with regret for spending so much. He grabs another scroll with all his strength, praying for a flame dragon mage or an instructor. Suddenly, a burst of golden lightning lights up the whole room. Something huge is about to appear. It is the same visual effect he saw when Ramba first appeared. Jinwoo cannot believe what his eyes are seeing. He did it. The system announces that he has obtained the X-rank Flame Dragon Mage. It is an incredibly rare summon. Ramba celebrates euphorically, while Jinwoo shouts with pure happiness. Now he feels like he could die in peace. But this is only the beginning. The guy feels like he is on a winning streak and has no intention of stopping his scroll openings. Ramba looks at him in confusion, wondering whether lucky streaks really exist in these kinds of games. Jinwoo is convinced that this is his moment of glory and pulls out another red scroll with a maniacal smile. And luck follows him again. He tears the paper with frantic energy while the system shines once more. The message is clear. He has obtained the training instructor, another X-rank summon. Jinwoo breaks down in tears of joy. He finally got what he was looking for after so much suffering. From the glow emerges an imposing figure with armor and a stern expression, ready for action. There stand his two new X-rank allies, marking the beginning of his true personal army. The instructor, named Hunjio, looks around in confusion, asking what kind of place this is. Jinwoo knows that although Hunjio was unpopular in the game because of his low individual combat ability, his value lies elsewhere. He is a training maniac who lives by the philosophy that military discipline is no joke. His abilities, growth, and charisma allow him to overwhelm other summons in order to force them to grow stronger. But the best part is his instructor ability, which unlocks the hidden potential of his allies and massively accelerates their growth. Jinwoo is already imagining an ultra-muscular and powerful Ramba thanks to Hunjio's hellish training. Ramba, for her part, makes it very clear that she has absolutely no interest in becoming stronger if it means that kind of exercise. Jinwoo greets Hunjio with a smile, saying that it has been a long time since the last time. That very particular nickname sounds familiar to the instructor. He starts analyzing the face of his new summoner. "Could it be you, Jinwoo-god?" Hunjio asks, finally recognizing the legendary player who used to control him in the past. Hunjio kneels before Jinwoo with unshakable loyalty, calling him his lord in the middle of everyone's surprise. He confesses that after the mysterious shutdown of the game, he never thought the day would come when he would meet him again. Jinwoo smiles in relief when he sees that, just like Ramba, Hunjio is exactly the same disciplined warrior he raised. But the surprises do not end there, because a new female voice echoes through the place, calling for her lord. It is the Flame Dragon Mage, who looks at Jinwoo in amazement, wondering if the god Jinwoo is really standing before her. Jinwoo is left stunned. It is the first time he has ever heard her voice, since in the game she was a silent X-rank character. The system reveals her past. Officially, she was a failed mage, but she carries the heart of an ancient dragon inside her. She possesses the ability Devour, which permanently increases her damage every time she kills a boss-level enemy. Since only Hunjio can unlock that potential, Jinwoo was the only player capable of using this mage at her maximum level. The mage rushes over to greet him with overflowing joy, assuring him that she missed him very much. Jinwoo feels flattered and a little flustered by so much sudden affection from his legendary summons. He asks them that if there are people nearby, they should not call him by his god nickname and should simply treat him as Jinwoo. With the new summons secured, Jinwoo decides that it is finally time to put an end to this exhausting day. He says goodbye to them for the moment, exhausted and with the only thought in mind being to get home and sleep. He collapses onto his bed. The effort of having torn thousands of scrolls takes its toll, and he falls fast asleep. While Jinwoo snores like a log, his 3 summons gather in the room to catch up. Hunjio and the mage comment on how much has happened since they were together under their lord's command. Ramba joins the conversation, remembering that she and Hunjio only shared a team for 1 month in the past. With the tone of a veteran, Hunjio makes it clear to the little fairy that he has far more experience and rank than she does. But his expression turns serious. He has an important message for his companions about their current situation. Hunjio declares that, right now, they are far too weak to be of real use to their lord. He slams the table with determination. If they want to protect Jinwoo in the future, they must start training immediately. He decides that even while their lord sleeps, they will not rest if they are to recover their former glory. He starts with the mage, ordering her to meditate so she can sense mana and thus unlock her hidden ability. Then he turns toward Ramba with a look that freezes the blood. The poor fairy knows that nothing good will come of this. He tells her that she needs to improve her physical strength and speed, so she will be going through special training with him. Ramba tries to excuse herself by saying that she is just a magical fairy, but Hunjio accepts no excuses. He takes her to the kitchen and orders her to start swinging a frying pan as if it were a combat weapon. Ramba panics when she hears that her daily quota to begin with is no less than 5,000 repetitions. The little fairy begs for mercy as she is dragged into hellish training, while Jinwoo keeps sleeping unaware of everything. Meanwhile, in the headquarters offices, an official receives news that leaves him completely frozen. Apparently, the director has ordered all supplies of low-grade scrolls to be cut off immediately. The man cannot understand why someone with so much power would interfere in such an insignificant matter. On top of that, they are demanding a detailed report on the use of every scroll that has been delivered so far. He strongly suspects that assemblyman Lim Hisu has been pulling strings to sabotage his work. He knows that if they run out of supplies from headquarters, they will have absolutely nothing to offer Mr. Beak. Just when desperation was starting to take hold of him, his cell phone begins to ring with a message. He is left speechless when he sees that the sender is Baek Jinwoo himself, sending an unexpected notification. His assistant notices the tension on his face and asks what happened for him to react that way. Jinwoo's message says that from now on, he will no longer need to receive any more low-grade scrolls. But what unsettles the official the most is the confidence with which Jinwoo says that he has already obtained what he was looking for. Jinwoo thanks him for all the previous support, which forces the man to decide that he must settle things with Lim Hisu once and for all. After the previous events, we find ourselves in Gwanaksan, near Xianbawi Station, where Jinwoo's fate takes a new turn. Jinwoo lets out a preparatory sigh, feeling the breeze before stepping into his next great challenge. In front of him rises what appears to be an ordinary dungeon, the perfect place to test his new abilities. He remembers that in the world of BOS, the game he mastered, there were 4 fundamental types of dungeons. There was the Tower of Trials, a feared place where players push their skills to the limit in exchange for incredible treasures. The third type involved the Dragon of Chaos, a legendary creature that represented one of the peaks of the game's difficulty. There were also raid dungeons, designed to be conquered through the combined effort of a large group. However, Jinwoo knows that many of these functions still have not manifested in reality, so he ignores them for now. He prefers to focus on normal dungeons, which are the ones manifesting randomly in the real world. As he walks, he notices how the world has changed. What used to be fixed-level zones are now unpredictable events. He sees multiple requests on his phone from players looking for a group, but he trusts completely in his own strength. He arrives at the checkpoint at the base of the mountain, where the dungeon's energy can already be felt strongly. The blue portal shines intensely behind warning tape. It is a zone of imminent danger for any civilian. Jinwoo knows he has to be fast. If a dungeon is not closed soon, the monsters could escape outside. A security officer steps into his path and following protocol, asks for his hunter license before allowing him through. Jinwoo calmly takes out his official card and hands it over so the man can verify his credentials. Everything is in order, you may proceed, the officer confirms after checking the young hunter's identification. Please be very careful in there, the officer adds as he watches Jinwoo head straight toward the portal. Jinwoo steps into the portal's light with his eyes fixed on his target, ready for whatever awaits him on the other side. Once inside, magical energy envelops him, and the landscape transforms into a desolate battlefield. A clash of steel rings out violently, showing that combat has already begun in this strange domain. Before his eyes, a legion of knights is facing an endless horde of monsters in a desperate struggle. Jinwoo understands it instantly. This is not an ordinary dungeon, but a complex subjugation dungeon. The knights on the walls shout desperately for them to open fire. The orcs are climbing up, and the order is to pour boiling water to stop them. The monsters climb the ladders roaring with killing intent, while the defenders try to hold the line at all costs. Baek Jinwoo watches one of his bursts of light pierce through an orc, thinking that this feels far more real than the original game. In the middle of the battlefield, a soldier falls victim to an orc's axe strike that manages to break through the defense. The situation turns ugly, and the cries for healers come quickly when they see the wounded piling up on the ground. Baek Jinwoo looks at the disaster from above, realizing that this is no longer a simulation, but a real war. He takes a second to breathe and focus, determined to do what he does best to clear this dungeon. Suddenly, a hexagonal energy barrier starts to surround him as he prepares his next move. Ramba gets ready for action, prepared to follow her summoner's orders. Baek Jinwoo draws his weapon while power starts flowing around him. The system confirms the summoning of his star team. Ramba, Instructor Hunjio, and the Flame Dragon Mage appear on the scene. To complete the team, he adds Minakong and the D-rank Golden Fairy, making sure he has the best tanks and healers available. Without wasting time, he orders Ramba to give Hunjio an attack speed buff so he can begin the slaughter. He tells the Flame Dragon Mage to stay back and cover the others with long-range fire. Minakong receives the order to go straight for the orc boss, leaping down from the wall with incredible force. The gorilla falls like a meteor onto the enemies, following Baek Jinwoo's plan since the pattern of this dungeon is pretty predictable. The impact kicks up a cloud of dust and rubble right in the middle of the enemy lines. Minakong lands in front of the giant orc leading the attack, ready to finish this quickly. The orc boss roars and raises its weapon, trying to intimidate the summon standing before it. A brutal clash of force erupts, shaking the ground of the dungeon. Ramba shouts enthusiastically, cheering her companions on to keep advancing without mercy. Hunjio springs into action with an icy stare, completely focused on his target. With one leap, he reaches the center of the conflict, landing with surgical precision. The swordsman begins delivering green slashes that cut through several orcs at once with absurd speed. Baek Jinwoo watches with satisfaction, noticing that Hunjio's level is now on a whole different level compared to his early days. It even seems to him that the fight is turning out easier than expected as he watches his summons dominate the field. The knights who had been defending the wall cannot believe what they are seeing. They are in shock as those allies appeared out of nowhere to save them. Minakong keeps crushing orcs nonstop, moving with surprising agility for his size. Meanwhile, the Golden Fairy flutters over the battlefield, casting healing flashes that keep everyone at 100%. Ramba is having the time of her life mocking the orcs while dodging their attacks with total ease. Seeing that Ramba is wasting time playing around, Baek Jinwoo yells at her to get serious. The Flame Dragon Mage gets annoyed because they almost dirtied her master's clothes and decides it is time to heat things up. She concentrates all her power into her magical artifact, surrounding herself with intense flames. She launches her special attack, a wave of fire shaped like a dragon that sweeps away everything in front of it. The fire consumes the orcs in an instant, leaving the monsters screaming as they turn to ashes. The orc boss watches helplessly as its army vanishes under the mage's attack. Hunjio takes advantage of the distraction to deliver the finishing blow, moving like lightning. With one powerful slash, the swordsman brings down the leader of the orcs, sealing the victory. The dungeon completion sign appears, and Ramba celebrates by jumping with joy while the others rest after the fight. The Flame Dragon Mage reaches level 5 and looks very happy to have been useful to her lord. Hunjio also reaches level 5, improving his combat stats considerably. Baek Jinwoo receives a mid-grade summoning scroll as a reward, and is surprised to realize that he just earned 500,000 won in barely 2 minutes. Baek Jinwoo does not want to waste a single second and is already planning to enter the next dungeon with his trusted team. He clenches his fist with determination, knowing that leveling up his summons and filling his pockets at the same time is the perfect business. He feels more motivated than ever, convinced that through sheer grinding, he is going to achieve the life he always wanted. Meanwhile, the action shifts to the corporate offices, where the big shots pull the strings of the rankers. Assemblyman Park Hyunbo is slumped over his desk, lamenting the situation he is in. Eugia looks at him with her arms crossed, seriously asking him what the hell he was thinking when he accepted that bet. In the meeting room, Assemblyman Lim Hisu mocks the tension in the air while the boss tries to stay calm. Lim Hisu makes a sarcastic comment, saying he only wanted to give Park some advice because it looks like he is throwing the budget in the trash. The veins pop in Park Hyunbo's forehead with rage, and he asks what the point of a management team is if they cannot polish a real talent. Lim Hisu throws a poisonous jab, reminding him that none of the players he has trained have managed to make it to the national selection. He keeps mocking him, asking if all this tantrum is just because of the record in that Tuesday dungeon. Park Hyunbo takes the bait, sweating coldly while cursing the arrogant Lim Hisu in his head. He knows Lim Hisu is good at what he does, and that his players always end up on top, which makes the mockery hurt even more. But Park is not going to stay quiet, and asks what he would do if one of his players makes it into the national team. Lim Hisu smiles maliciously and suggests that, if he is so confident, they make it official with a formal bet. They agree to compare their players' rankings to see whose ends up higher on the national top 10 list. Park accepts the challenge without hesitating for even a second. The conditions are brutal. The loser must resign publicly and pay a fine of 1 billion won while the boss begs them not to fight. Later, Eugia asks him if he really plans to bet his career on Baek Jinwoo, arguing that he is only a gamer and still has a long way to go before becoming a true ranker. Park admits that he knows the risks, but his eyes say he has an ace up his sleeve. He grits his teeth, feeling that he cannot turn back now. He is convinced that if they support Baek Jinwoo properly, he will give them incredibly valuable information that nobody else has. Suddenly, an employee runs into the office, shouting for the assemblyman and scaring everyone. Park Hyunbo jumps to his feet and asks what is happening with such urgency. The employee, catching his breath, tells him that they finally found the mysterious player who had been clearing D-rank dungeons by the dozen. Park is left stunned when he hears that the one responsible for such a feat is none other than Baek Jinwoo himself. Eugia also cannot believe that a newbie who has only been registered for a month is finishing dungeons in under 5 minutes. Park lets out a victorious chuckle, enjoying the moment in front of Gia's surprise. He starts celebrating like a madman, shouting that he always knew Baek Jinwoo was the best of them all while Gia feels embarrassed by his yelling. Park is euphoric, reaffirming that his instinct for finding talent never fails him. Baek Jinwoo finishes another training session and feels quite satisfied with the results. He appears wrapped in a blue light, looking like a complete professional who knows what he is doing. He checks his bank account and sees that he already has 26 million accumulated, which means his net profit is an impressive 16 million won. He throws himself onto his bed with a huge grin, unable to believe that he is finally seeing the fruit of his efforts. He remembers how he became a madman over these last 4 days, completing no fewer than 160 D-rank dungeons. He knows that without Hunjio and the mage's help, clearing rooms at that speed would have been impossible. He starts thinking about all the money he made selling each of the mid-grade scrolls dropped by the bosses. Baek Jinwoo drops to his knees holding his phone like it is a sacred treasure, exaggerating a bit about his blood, sweat, and tears under Ramba's judging stare. He sits on his bed and decides that the first thing he needs to do is organize his finances and separate the money into different accounts. He sets aside one account for survival expenses, like food, rent, and utilities, while Ramba imagines herself eating something delicious. He also creates a special account for his family, dreaming of the day when he can give them all the luxuries they deserve. He imagines himself as a magnate with sunglasses and wine, thinking that saving 10 million a month is a dream come true that no longer feels so far away. And to finish his financial plan, Jinwoo checks his player account, where he has a little over 6 million won reserved. He is certain that every coin in that account will be reinvested exclusively into improving his summons. He knows money is vital, but right now what matters most to him is increasing his value and reputation as a player. Thanks to the constant raids, Ramba, Hunjio, and the mage have already passed level 30. It is time to start with runes and equipment upgrades. To advance quickly, he needs to conquer the weekday dungeons, and for that he urgently needs new elite summons. He enters the player web to see what is available on the market, but he gets a surprise. He freezes when he sees that C-rank ones cost 20 million on average. He does not understand why they are so expensive. B-rank ones go up to 200 million, and there is no trace of A or S-rank ones. Jinwoo suddenly feels poor. Then he analyzes it more carefully and understands that it makes sense, since the chances of obtaining a B rank are extremely low. But he does not get discouraged, because he has an alternative plan up his sleeve. He gets ready to write a message, prepared to set his next big move in motion. This is exactly why he found himself a backup sponsor to rely on when things got expensive. At the government office, the aide comes in shouting for Assemblyman Park Hyungbo. Park is bored until he hears that there is a new request from none other than Baek Jinwoo. Park jumps to his feet, completely excited. The aide tells him that Jinwoo has sent a new request. Park Hyungbo turns into a total fanboy with hearts in his eyes, saying he would buy anything Jinwoo asks for, while the aide thinks his obsession is getting out of control. Park stares at the phone, analyzing the situation seriously. Jinwoo has sent a crazy shopping list: titanium golems, sky wyverns, and frost cats. The total is astronomical. Park is horrified when he sees that Jinwoo wants them to buy all that at once. It is a fortune in high-level summons. Park grabs his head, thinking that if Central Headquarters had given him all that, he would not still be using C-rank summons. Then he wonders what Jinwoo will give in return. The aide explains that Jinwoo is offering to share his time attack strategies for the weekday dungeons. Park is surprised, not just for one dungeon, but for all the weekday dungeons. That is top-level information. He realizes that it is an incredibly ambitious and strategic offer on Jinwoo's part. Park smiles confidently, determined to close the deal. He promises that he will speak to the director of Central Headquarters immediately so they approve the budget. But things do not go as he expected, and Park ends up insulting the director, calling him a dusty fossil for not seeing the opportunity. He starts throwing papers everywhere, complaining that because of people like that the country always ends up in last place. Eugia watches the scene with resignation. Park lets out a shout of frustration that echoes through the whole office, while Gia wishes all assemblymen had at least half that much passion. The aide tells him that the director demands real proof, or that they first clear the dungeons before releasing a single one. Park remains furious, wondering how the hell they are supposed to clear the dungeons if they are not given the summons needed to do it. He shouts that if Jinwoo's information is real, it would be a global bombshell, but Central Headquarters is too stupid to realize it. Suddenly, Park stops when he hears something he was not expecting. Eugia smiles elegantly and says that selling such valuable information for only 1.3 billion seems almost like a gift to her. The aide turns pale when he hears her. She steps toward the assemblyman with a look overflowing with confidence and power. Without batting an eye, Gia proposes paying for all the summons Jinwoo requested herself, leaving Park and the aide in total shock. Park suddenly remembers his assistant's true identity and involuntarily swallows. The secret is revealed. Eugia is the fourth granddaughter of the Daeseong Group, the richest conglomerate in Korea. Basically, she has money to spare. Gia grew up receiving the most exclusive education a chaebol heiress could have, surrounded by books and trophies. But what truly fascinated her was not corporate control, but the world of players and their abilities. And lately, the player who has completely captured her attention and fascinated her is, of course, Baek Jinwoo. She sees him as someone who knows far too much to be a simple newbie, and who has the audacity needed to negotiate directly with the country. Eugia proposes something bold. What if we create a one-person management company just for him? A handshake symbolizes the beginning of this ambitious project. The aide is left speechless while she explains her vision. Invest aggressively to make the most of Jinwoo's information, and then divide the profits, operating in a completely different way from the current team. Park Hyungbo, although interested, cannot help asking if she is sure, since it involves an astronomical amount of money. With an air of superiority, Gia laughs at Park's concern over her bank account, as if money were the last thing she had to worry about. "You do not need to worry about my money," she states firmly, making it clear that for her this is just another investment in her search for talent. With a determined smile and an aura of success, Eugia reaches a conclusion. Before taking the next step, she needs to meet with Baek Jinwoo one more time. Eugia waits for him in a luxury restaurant, sitting with that boss lady posture that only a millionaire heiress could have. She pauses for a moment in thought, probably mentally reviewing the deal she is about to offer our protagonist. Jinwoo enters the hall guided by a waiter, as if he were a top-tier VIP guest. It all started when Jinwoo received a message from Gia asking him to meet and discuss the details of their collaboration. The place turns out to be an impressive skyscraper, one of those five-star hotels that makes you feel poor just by looking at it. Jinwoo is treated like a king, with flawless service and money flying everywhere, a lifestyle that suits him pretty well. When he reaches the table, Jinwoo tries to stay calm in front of the girl's imposing presence. Eugia stands up to greet him with an elegance that screams money from every pore. And for good reason, because it turns out Gia is a genius with an MBA from Stanford and the heiress to the Daeseong group. In the news, she is portrayed as the prodigy of the century who entered player headquarters with the highest scores in history. Jinwoo is surprised that she is alone without security, but she thanks him for coming and starts talking business. Gia tells him the truth right away. This meeting is not on behalf of player headquarters. As the dishes are served, the conversation becomes much more interesting and serious. She explains that it will be hard for headquarters to keep supporting him because of internal political opposition. But Jinwoo does not care. If they do not support him, he will simply keep his information to himself and profit on his own. That is when she throws him a proposal that leaves him with his food halfway to his mouth. Gia wants to bypass the conservative rules of headquarters and go directly for the profit. Her plan is to create an exclusive one-man management company just for him, to handle everything her own way. Jinwoo is left wondering whether a one-man management setup is really what he needs right now. The logic is simple. Big corporations move for money, and he can generate a lot of profit if he has the right backing. Gia pulls out a golden card and makes it clear that she is looking for someone who knows how to squeeze the maximum value out of his secrets. She offers him the full support of her family, Daeseong, without holding anything back. The guy cannot believe it. In Chibai mode, Gia tells him that money does not lie and that he seems like a good guy, so she trusts him. They agree to meet the next day on an empty lot so he can inspect the summons he requested. That was fast. Gia smiles with satisfaction, knowing that she has practically already sealed the deal in her mind. It turns out the girl had already started preparing everything before he even signed. Long live the chaeballs, seriously. We cut to a mountain park where someone approaches with determined steps. It is Baek Jinwoo, Jinwoo's younger sister, complaining that her brother has barely paid attention to her lately. Suddenly, she crosses paths with Gia, who is walking by as if she were on a fashion runway. Ajin starts thinking that face looks familiar, probably from Instagram or some social media site. She checks her phone and realizes it is none other than Eugia, the famous heiress. She cannot believe it. The shock is so intense that she freezes completely, while Gia keeps walking without noticing. Meanwhile, in a clearing in the forest, the gasps of brutal training can be heard. It is Instructor Hunjio, wearing his sunglasses, shouting at everyone to hit harder. He has Ramba and the other summons suffering like crazy, because according to him, people only grow by surpassing their limits. The instructor is an iron sergeant who does not let anyone relax by even a millimeter during the session. Suddenly, the guy orders everyone to be quiet because he senses someone approaching their position. Jinwoo takes a breather to wipe away his sweat, just as Eugia appears at the scene. She greets him naturally, asking whether he has been training that hard since early morning. Jinwoo introduces his star team to her, the instructor, Ramba, the flame dragon mage, and the gorilla Furgo. Then he orders his summons to finish training while he stays alone with Gia. To seal the deal, she tells him that she has a special gift for him first and begins summoning something powerful. Gia sends Jinwoo a trade request, and he stares at the screen ready to receive his gift. It turns out the game allows trading between players, which is basic for moving high-level items and summons. Trade accepted, Jinwoo receives a bunch of useful things, including some new summons for his collection. The system is strict. If you try to scam someone and run, you get hit with a curse that wipes you off the map. We see the trade list. Gia is handing him everything from A-rank summons to extremely rare items. Jinwoo does not hesitate any longer and presses the accept button to make the deal with the heiress official. Deal complete. Jinwoo is wrapped in a blue light as the new resources are integrated into his inventory. The protagonist bows in gratitude, calling it an incredible gift. She, with all the class in the world, tells him it is nothing. But gift time is over. Gia turns serious and says it is time to move on to the real business discussion. We cut to a corporate building. The name of the new company will be Ubik, combining their surnames. The share distribution is clear, 70% for Jinwoo and 25% for Gia, a very generous offer for him. The remaining 5% goes to Assemblyman Park, who appears there all happy celebrating his little slice of the pie. They also plan to hire staff, 2 former headquarters employees who quit after receiving an offer at triple the salary. Jinwoo turns a little pale at how quickly Gia is pulling the strings to bring in trusted people. He wonders whether it is really okay for him to keep 70%, but she clarifies that this is her way of betting on his talent. Gia explains that she is keeping 25% and that she has the skill needed to maximize the value of that share. To her, voting rights do not matter that much in a one-man company. What really matters is something else. What matters most is her relationship with Jinwoo. It is time to set greed aside and solidify their bond. We see the contract finalized with Baek Jinwoo's signature clearly written on it. There is no turning back now. Gia smiles in chibai mode, satisfied that she has secured her star player for her personal project. Contract complete, the two shake hands and Jinwoo says he looks forward to working well with his new boss. Suddenly, a nearby guard notices something strange moving in the bushes and goes on alert. He peeks over curiously, wondering what the hell is going on hidden among the plants. A sharp scream breaks the silence. Someone has just been discovered in the middle of the brush. The guard does not waste time and lunges straight toward where the sound came from to catch the intruder. Using the auto-hunt skill, he drags someone out by the feet. It turns out to be Baek Ajin, Jinwoo's sister. Ajin ends up hanging upside down with a face full of terror, while Jinwoo asks what she is doing there spying. Sitting on a bench, Jinwoo tries to process the situation while looking at his sister with disapproval. Ajin is on her knees, covered in leaves, and wearing a guilty expression she cannot hide after being caught. Jinwoo accuses her of being a fan of Gia and having followed her there, but she tries to come up with a cheap excuse. But the true fact system lands a critical hit on her HP because it is obvious she got caught lying. Jinwoo scolds her for standing there secretly watching from the side like a full-blown stalker. She cannot take the pressure anymore and finally confesses, shouting, "Fine, yes, it is true." Right away, Ajin grabs her brother by the clothes and demands to know how he knows the famous Eugia. She is hysterical, unable to understand when her loser brother became friends with a millionaire heiress. A vision appears of Gia like an angel saying that she was planning to introduce herself to the family soon, which leaves Ajin in total shock. The girl starts throwing an Oscar-worthy tantrum, kicking and flailing, so they will tell her the whole truth right now. She calms down a little, although she still keeps staring, waiting for an explanation that makes sense to her. Jinwoo sighs and decides it is time to tell her a version of the truth that his sister can digest. Ajin starts connecting the dots. Her brother was a famous gamer, and recently someone broke a dungeon record. Jinwoo confirms that yes, everything that has been happening is connected to his player abilities. Ajin falls silent in thought, trying to process that her brother is far more important than she had realized until now. Jinwoo asks Ajin whether she remembers that old mobile game he used to spend so much time on. He tries to play it off, saying that he only played BOS for a year and that the other one was different, while inside he fears she will discover his identity as Jinugod. Ajin cannot believe he wasted an entire year on that trash game, leaving Jinwoo with a deeply disappointed expression. Sitting in the park, Jinwoo reflects on how all those wasted hours in front of the screen are finally paying off. Ajin smiles at him gently and clarifies that it is not that she distrusts him, she is just surprised to see how much he has changed. Jinwoo looks at his hands in silence. He knows there is always a small chance that things could turn dangerous in this new world. He knows clearly that he cannot drag his parents into danger before he is prepared enough and capable of protecting them. His absolute priority is to become strong enough to secure his family's well-being before revealing who he really is. Back to reality, Jinwoo asks his sister to keep the secret for a while, promising that he himself will tell their parents later. Later on, we see Ajin's shadow elf trembling while one of Jinwoo's warriors, Dex, watches her curiously. Dex notices that the little elf is terrified by his presence, while Ajin does not understand why her summon is acting so uneasy. Jinwoo points out the elf's strange reaction and asks his sister why she is behaving in such a frightened way. Then he explains that, to be efficient, a shadow elf needs to be linked to a B-rank shadow wolf in order to fight as a team. Ajin checks her phone in fascination, having no idea that summons existed that worked together in such a specific way. The girl remains glued to her phone screen, processing the information about her summons requirements. With an expression of pure nervousness, she turns to her brother and calls him in a very suspicious tone of voice, "Dear big brother." Ajin shows him the astronomical price on the screen, 500 million won for a B-rank shadow wolf. She nearly collapses. Jinwoo takes it with maddening calm and simply tells her to relax and wait a little. He promises that he will get her one in less than a month, which instantly brings her joy back. 500 million, she laughs and jokes that she would rather save up little by little to buy it herself, doubting his promise. Jinwoo stands up and starts walking away with an air of superiority, acting like the great player that he is. He leaves by telling her not to cry from gratitude when he gives it to her later, which leaves his sister pretty indignant. The training ends and Jinwoo calls his troops to withdraw, while Ajin feels that all of this is far too unreal. Left alone on the bench with her little elf, Ajin thinks that her brother seems to have turned into a completely different person. 1 week later, we find ourselves before an imposing red dungeon portal where the team prepares for action. One of the new Eugia company employees presents Jinwoo with the special gear he will have to use during the raids. Jinwoo looks at the gear curiously and asks exactly what he is supposed to wear to enter the dungeon. Eugia explains professionally that the first major product of their company will be the sale of high-quality strategic information. The business plan is to sell exclusive videos of perfect dungeon routes at very high prices. And to record those videos with maximum precision, they need Jinwoo to use this cutting-edge recording equipment. The device is designed to capture everything that happens around the player in an ultra-detailed 3D format. Jinwoo puts on the black jacket and comments that, despite the technology, it is surprisingly light and comfortable to wear. To complete his new professional look, he puts on sunglasses that give him the air of a secret agent ready for the mission. Even though he looks cool, Jinwoo admits that he feels a little ridiculous with so many cameras and recording devices on him. He confesses to Eugia that it is his first time in this dungeon, so he is not sure whether the recording will come out perfect on the first try. Eugia reassures him, saying that they will handle editing the best parts of the fight for the final product. Just before entering the red portal, Jinwoo asks very seriously whether he is allowed to break the national record during his raid. Eugia goes silent for a second, processing the sheer audacity of her partner, and can only ask, "Excuse me." Jinwoo tells her not to worry, that he is more than capable of doing it, and she asks him to just act naturally. With determined steps, the protagonist crosses the threshold of the portal toward his first official mission with Eugia. The current Korean record for this specific Monday dungeon is around 7 minutes, an extremely difficult time. But with a smile of absolute confidence, Jinwoo knows that for him this will be an easy and quick victory. Baek Jinwoo crosses the threshold into the interior of the dungeon, where a dense purple atmosphere completely envelops him. A system message appears informing him that this is the Monday dungeon, the only place where attack runes can be obtained, represented by a crimson crystal. Jinwoo knows that clear time is vital for the rankings, and that attack runes are the heart of progression in BOS, just like in any other game. He remembers that BOS was called a trash game because without those basic attack runes, a player was practically useless and could not progress. The system announces that this is a defense dungeon, where the usual objective is to withstand waves of undead for a never-ending 30 minutes, Chinese letter. However, completion time remains the determining factor in the global rankings, where the great powers compete for the top positions. Even though it is an endurance challenge, there is a shortcut. If the final boss, the Lick, is defeated, the dungeon is completed instantly. Going straight for the boss has become the standard strategy for experts. Jinwoo checks that the sensors on his new recording suit are working perfectly. With unshakable calm, the young warrior stops for a moment to set up his next moves in front of the floating interface. The system allows him to organize up to 3 preset teams for different combat situations, each assigned to a colored crystal. Jinwoo selects his main team, which he had already meticulously prepared for PvP fights and daily dungeons. Immediately, the X-rank instructor Hunjio, the C-rank combat aide, and the powerful D-rank Minakong materialize on the battlefield. They are joined by Radiance, the C-rank priest, and the mischievous D-rank Ramba, completing a fearsome combat formation. The system warning is clear: the evil Lick's undead horde is approaching, and Jinwoo must hold out until reinforcements arrive. The timer begins counting down from 30 minutes, while Jinwoo and his summons take position to receive the impact. A tide of skeletons and creatures of the underworld surges out of the darkness, charging with blind fury at the intruders. Minakong, the enormous purple-furred gorilla, lets out a deafening roar and dives headfirst into the front line of enemies. With terrifying brute strength, the gorilla starts crushing skeletons, smashing them to pieces instantly with his fists. The battlefield fills with fragments of bone as Jinwoo's troops demonstrate their overwhelming physical superiority. A skeleton is torn apart by the impact, proving that common enemies are no match for Jinwoo's private army. With a confident smile and his loyal warriors ready behind him, Jinwoo extends his hand and gives the final order. "All right, guys, let's go." There we have the dungeon boss, the Lick. He looks pretty threatening with all that purple energy coming off him. Jinwoo wastes no time and brings out his whole team to face him. We have Radiance, Ramba, Combat Aid, and Instructor Hunjio ready to fight. The protagonist gives his first orders to Hunjio with a smile that says, "I have everything under control." The instructor nods very seriously and suggests they look for higher ground to get a better view. As they run, Jinwoo thinks that thank goodness Hunjio is smart and keeps quiet now that they are being recorded. The timer shows about 28 minutes left, and a tide of skeletons comes rushing at them. Jinwoo stays calm. It took them barely 2 minutes to get here, so they are moving at a crazy pace. The skeletons try to surround Radiance, but support units are far from defenseless. Hunjio charges into the attack and cuts a skeleton in half as if it were butter. Virgo also joins the fray and crushes an undead's head with one hand. Between him and Hunjio, they are clearing the area at incredible speed, sending bones flying all over the map. Jinwoo watches the spectacle very calmly. With summons this strong, the truth is that one can afford to rest. The giant Lick floats in front of him, preparing to unleash some heavy spell. It is Combat Aid's turn. The sniper aims calmly, waiting for his master's signal. The shots begin, but the damage is laughable. It barely takes off 1 or 2 HP. That is why nobody usually uses this guy. He seems like a waste of space. In fact, Jinwoo remembers that before, this sniper was so bad that he could not kill anything even if you left him on auto for 32 hours. But in this dungeon, he is exactly what he needs. The Lick has brutal defenses, but very little total health. The protagonist tells him not to shoot yet, to hold his finger for a second. He orders Radiance to cast his blessing on the shooter to power him up. Combat Aid starts glowing with a very epic golden light as he prepares for the real thing. Radiance's magic is key because it cancels out the boss's dark shield, which is what blocks ranged attacks. With the boss unprotected, Jinwoo gets that look on his face like he has already won the match. "Open fire," the protagonist orders, and the sniper starts unloading nonstop straight into the Lick's face. Meanwhile, Hunjio stays on guard with glowing eyes, making sure no mob interferes with the process. The instructor keeps handing out slashes, while Virgo takes a huge leap to crash down on the skeletons. The gorilla lands with a heavy blow that sends all the enemies flying into the air. He stays planted there, roaring in their faces so they know who is in charge on this field. Radiance and Ramba stay focused, maintaining the buffs so the team does not lose power. Bullet casings pile up on the ground while the sniper keeps hammering the boss. Jinwoo lets out a chuckle seeing that everything is going exactly as he planned in his head. The damage still looks pitiful, barely taking off 2 points at a time, and the Lick has a face like, "Are you serious?" But speed is the key. Even if the hits are weak, they are constant, and the boss's health keeps going down without stopping. The monster starts getting nervous when it sees its defenses are useless against this harassment of mosquito bites. The whole battlefield is chaos of flying skeletons and colored lights. Normally, training a unit that weak would be a waste of time, but Jinwoo knows how to make good use of him. Virgo is having a blast destroying skeletons, while Jinwoo watches everything from the back. Attacks rain down on the gorilla, but he does not even flinch and keeps crushing skulls with a smile. The skeletons scream in despair before being turned into splinters. The protagonist just stands there looking very cool, with his arms crossed, watching his summons do all the dirty work. Suddenly, we see a flash of a sword cutting through the air at absurd speed. It is Hunjio who blocks a skeleton's attack and disposes of it in less than a second. With the instructor watching his back, Jinwoo knows clearly that today he is going to break all the dungeon records. Jinwoo plans to use Hunjio's runes and abilities to unlock his hidden potential and finish this quickly. Combat Aid aims his rifle and fires a burst of blue energy that crosses the whole stage with astonishing precision. The shot hits the Lick dead on, and it barely has time to react to the speed of the attack. The dungeon boss finally dissolves into a cloud of darkness, marking the end of the fight. System notifications pop up one after another: boss defeated, dungeon completed in only 4 minutes, and a new national record established. We change scenes to the Ubik office, where Eugia and her employees are glued to the ranking screen, unable to believe what they are seeing. Jinwoo has gone straight up to number 1 in the Monday dungeon, pushing all the veterans down the list. One of her employees admits that it is impressive, but points out that it has only been a week since Jinwoo got those summons. The guy wonders whether Jinwoo can really break the record for every weekly dungeon, while Gia listens in silence. If he is just bluffing, the employee mutters, worried because the protagonist has not explained how he plans to clear the rest of the levels. The ranking table shows the changing of the guard. The former leader is now second behind our protagonist. Gia watches the screen with a half smile and asks her team if they are really that worried about the result. The employee falls silent in the face of his boss's calm, sweating coldly from the pressure of the moment. Gia adjusts her hair with total confidence. After all, she was the one who put up the money to start this business, and she trusts her eye. She assures them that even if things go badly, she will make sure their careers do not suffer for having trusted her. Suddenly, Gia seems like an angel fallen from heaven when she confirms that their salaries will remain untouched no matter what happens. The employees hug each other, crying with happiness. Working for a boss like that is anyone's dream. Gia turns serious again for a second. She has the power and influence needed to back up her promises. Meanwhile, she reflects on Jinwoo and that strange ease with which he handles his summons. She is sure he is hiding something more. She remembers Jinwoo's confident look before entering, as if a dungeon of that level were nothing more than a child's game. For him, breaking national records seems as easy as turning a key in a lock. At the National Monitoring Center, the atmosphere is pure chaos. The record has been shattered, a technician shouts. On the giant screens, the result is displayed: Monday dungeon, low rank, completed in record time. The analysts run from side to side wondering who the hell is responsible for such a feat. Baek Jinwoo's name appears on the screen next to his photo, leaving everyone present open-mouthed. This is insane, the experts comment, while reviewing the data over and over again to confirm it is not a mistake. Nobody can believe that someone broke a historic record on his very first attempt in the dungeon. Gia in her office clasps her hands together in satisfaction. The first step of her master plan has been fulfilled perfectly. She clenches her fist tightly. She knows this business has just taken off in the best possible way for both of them. Her smile says it all. Even in the worst-case scenario, this investment is already a media success. If this works the way I expect, it is going to be huge, she thinks, visualizing the future of the Ubik company. Back in the dungeon, Jinwoo and his summons watch the sun set after the victory over the Lick. An exit portal opens in front of them, and Jinwoo decides it is already time to prepare for the next level. The protagonist opens his system interface with a smile. Now is when the true farming routine begins. A window appears asking if he wants to activate auto battle with his current team to gather resources. Defeating the boss of a weekly dungeon unlocks auto mode, allowing the summons to work on their own. Basically, as long as the summons keep smashing monsters, the rewards will keep piling up automatically in his inventory. Jinwoo selects Hunjio to store him in his inventory and manage the rest of the team efficiently. Ramba, the X-rank wind fairy, floats in front of him waiting to receive her new instructions. Jinwoo breaks the news to her. She will be the one in charge of leading the farming in the Monday dungeon. Ramba is in shock. She asks why the instructor is not staying, and Jinwoo explains that Hunjio has to train the other units. Ramba has a traumatic flashback of Hunjio's training sessions and decides that staying to farm is 1,000 times better. Ramba has a brief memory of what it is like to train with instructor Hunjio, a true military hell where nobody rests. In her memories, the instructor shows no mercy even to the smallest fairies, pushing them until he squeezes out all their potential. Back in reality, Ramba falls to her knees begging Jinwoo to let her stay farming. Anything is better than going back with the instructor. All right, he replies. Jinwoo's plan is clear. Clear all the weekly dungeons first to unlock auto mode in each of them. While the rest of his summons stay training, he optimizes his inventory to create the most efficient farming routine possible. Count on me, Ramba shouts enthusiastically when she sees that she is getting out of training. Jinwoo leaves the dungeon satisfied. When he comes out of the portal, Jinwoo finds that people are already waiting for him. What now? He thinks when he sees Eugia. Eugia greets him with a smile, as if she knew perfectly well that he was going to break the record on his first attempt. One of Jia's employees hands him a bag with all the video files of his feat so he can review them. Jinwoo asks if they do not need anything else now, while the Ubik staff keep thanking him non-stop for his work. Jia assures him that they will make sure the news does not leak to the general press, keeping a low profile for now. But Jinwoo does not care if the video of his national record gets out. Jia is left stunned when she hears it. "What?" she exclaims. In exchange for the fame, Jinwoo asks for only one thing, that they use all their resources to protect his family from any outside danger. He knows that with criminal gangs running loose in Korea, he needs someone as powerful as the Daeseong group to watch his back. Jia accepts without hesitation. She promises to protect Jinwoo's parents using all the influence of her family and her company. Back to work, Jinwoo manages to clear another level in an absurd time of only 3 minutes and 10 seconds. With times like these, the protagonist starts thinking big. The world rankings are within his reach. His strategy is flawless. He uses movement speed runes on his fastest monsters to fly through the maps. After finishing Tuesday's recordings, Jinwoo prepares for the next challenge, the Wednesday dungeon. This place is a frozen wasteland with a unique mechanic that makes it a nightmare for any ordinary hunter. The extreme cold applies a massive debuff that reduces movement speed almost to zero. It is like trying to run underwater. Jinwoo is shivering, so he opens his summon menu to bring out his team specialized for low temperatures. He summons the C-rank Frost Cat and the B-rank Wind Falcon to start moving. He also calls the Titanium Golem and the Horn Fairy to have defense and constant support in this hostile environment. Finally, the star of the team appears, the X-rank Flame Dragon Mage, ready to heat things up with her magic. The Frost Cat lets out an icy meow, showing that this is its natural terrain and that it is ready for action. In this place, having summons with cold resistance is vital, and luckily Jinwoo has the best at his disposal. Jinwoo scans the snowy horizon looking for the shortest route to the final boss. "Let's see what we have here," he mutters. He trusts completely in his Titanium Golem. With its size and resistance, it will be the base of his strategy today. He activates the Golem's shield, which glows with a protective energy capable of withstanding almost any blow from the local monsters. Adding the Wind Falcon's speed buff, the gigantic golem starts moving at a speed that defies the laws of physics. The falcon perches on the giant stone creature's shoulder to keep the speed aura active at all times. Jinwoo and the Flame Dragon Mage position themselves on the golem's palm to ride comfortably while it crosses the map. The golem starts running at full speed, breaking the wind barrier and kicking up clouds of snow in its wake. The speed is so extreme that the mage's face is distorted by the air pressure, definitely not a ride for weak stomachs. Both Jinwoo and his summon end up with expert-level dizziness. The experience is exciting, but it is turning their insides upside down. Despite the nausea, they keep going. Bless those who can handle this pace, Jinwoo thinks while trying not to throw up. The golem does not even flinch at the snow gorillas trying to block its path, sweeping them aside like simple ants. The stone giant keeps charging forward, showing why it is the key piece of this raid through the snow. Jinwoo is delighted. The Titanium Golem is the perfect tank for this kind of difficult and dangerous terrain. But the protagonist has an ace up his sleeve. They are not going to follow the conventional route marked on the map. That is not all, he warns. Jinwoo orders the golem to jump off an icy cliff. If they land well, they will save a massive amount of time on this speedrun. While they fall into the void, Jinwoo gives the order to the Flame Dragon Mage. Get ready. He knows time is gold, and they cannot waste even a second after landing. The Titanium Golem crashes into the ground with devastating force, shattering the ice and snow around it. The shortcut has worked perfectly. Boss alert! The system's red warnings appear, indicating that the dungeon's final monster is right in front of them. The enormous white ape does not look friendly at all. The boss roars with a fury capable of freezing the blood, surrounded by lightning and magical energy. It is the final obstacle to a new record. Without losing his composure, Jinwoo makes another quick summon, Fire Fairy, he shouts while a small winged silhouette appears out of nowhere. The Horn Fairy answers the call with a smile, while the enormous snow gorilla gets ready to crush them all. The size contrast is ridiculous. It is the moment of truth. Jinwoo points at the enemy and gives the final instruction, Flame Dragon now. The X-rank mage unleashes all her power. From her staff bursts a colossal blaze that takes the shape of a burning dragon, lighting up the whole frozen wasteland. The fire consumes the boss instantly. It did not have even the slightest chance against Jinwoo's summons X-rank magic. The glow of the explosion is blinding, erasing every trace of snow and cold in the boss area. The destructive power is simply on another level. Objective complete. The system announces the boss's defeat and the dungeon clear. Final time, 000422. Good, Jinwoo celebrates with his fist raised. Once the storm calms, the team takes a moment to breathe. The titanium golem rests on one knee while Jinwoo reviews the results of his feat. Another record beaten, Jinwoo exclaims with a huge grin. His plan for maximum efficiency is producing incredible results. However, the joy does not last long. He starts feeling pale, and terrible nausea runs through his body. The high-speed ride is taking its toll on him. Poor Jinwoo ends up vomiting rainbows, while the flame dragon mage also staggers around dizzy. Damn golem motion sickness, he mutters while his other summons look at him in concern. Meanwhile, in the real world, the news explodes across the internet. New national record in South Korea. Wednesday dungeon in 422. Who is Baek Jinwoo? In the streets, people cannot stop looking at their phones. The name Baek Jinwoo starts spreading from mouth to mouth, generating an unprecedented wave of curiosity. Even people who saw him before start connecting the dots. Isn't he the same guy who cleared the Tuesday dungeon? They ask in confusion. The age of anonymity is over for him. From this moment on, all of Korea's eyes are on Baek Jinwoo, the hunter who has come to change the rules of the game. In a cafe, a guy wonders who this Baek Jinwoo is that everyone keeps talking about. His friend, surprised, refreshes his memory. He is the one who posted on social media that he had broken Kang Jin-ho's record. His friends check their phones, unable to believe that Jinwoo did it again and surpassed yet another historic mark. The news spreads fast. Baek Jinwoo appeared like a comet, breaking time attack records 3 days in a row, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. No one can explain how a newbie who does not even look like a ranker is pulling this off. The headlines do not lie. Monday's record fell, Tuesday's collapsed, and Wednesday's was shattered. The whole country has its eyes on him, wondering if he will conquer Thursday's dungeon too. In his office, the director of Central Headquarters hears Jinwoo's name and falls into thought. It is the same player assemblyman Park Chang-seok told him about some time ago. The director remembers that he was the boy who wanted to negotiate information in exchange for summons, the same one assemblyman Lim Hee-soo firmly opposed. It turns out the boy's information was real, but back then the assemblymen refused to spend a single one without seeing results first. Now that mistake is costing them dearly. The director leans back in his chair, realizing that they completely underestimated Jinwoo's potential. He breaks into a cold sweat thinking about the consequences. In politics, the only thing that matters is results. Their plans are falling apart in the face of reality. The charts show that his approval rating dropped to 31%, while his opponents are celebrating, all because of Lim's bad advice. If they had supported Jinwoo from the beginning, they would now have public applause and a huge boost in the elections. They picture Jinwoo waving to the masses while they reap the benefits. The director shakes his head, regretting that Lim Hee-soo's instincts have become so dull that he let a golden opportunity slip away. He calls his secretary and gives him a direct order. They must get in touch with Baek Jinwoo again. They cannot let him get away. The secretary is surprised, asking if the contact should come directly from his office. The director nods. He knows they have to win him back no matter what. They thought he was a fraud, but he turned out to be the deal of the century. Now the director is determined to regain his favor. Meanwhile, in the world of dungeons, each day of the week has its own reward. Monday and Wednesday dungeons grant essential runes for players. Tuesday's dungeon is where refinement agents can be obtained, which are needed to improve equipment. Jinwoo walks forward with steady steps toward a new challenge. With every step, a blue energy emanates from his body, ready for another raid. Together with Dex and Little Ramba, Jinwoo arrives in a desert area. They know today calls for something different. Thursday dungeons are key because they give skill books, although they normally do not contain unique techniques for summons. However, there are exceptions. There are special skills that only Hunjio and the Flame Dragon Mage can unlock under certain conditions. Dex watches Ramba, who seems to be throwing a silent tantrum. Jinwoo knows that even if epic skills do not always drop, it is still worth running it for the rest of the loot. Doing Thursday dungeons has a huge advantage. It saves you from having to go on Sundays, which is when everyone is killing each other to get in. Both dungeons drop skill books, but Thursday is much calmer. Jinwoo bids farewell to a portal with a thank you note from the monsters, who are sick of seeing him. Relaxed, Jinwoo sips a soda wearing sunglasses. He has not even broken a sweat yet, and is already thinking about the next move. Instead of killing themselves grinding nonstop, the team decided Sundays would be for resting. Jinwoo and Little Ramba take an epic nap. Back in action, Jinwoo enters the easy Thursday dungeon, but in this world, easy is a relative term. Boss alert, a rumble shakes the place as a massive stone starts to emerge before them. It is a giant earth golem. This boss has absurdly high defense. It is basically a mountain with legs trying to crush Jinwoo the moment he steps into the room. The standard strategy to defeat it is to use a pack of B-rank white wolves to gradually reduce its defense, but Jinwoo does not have time for that. He opens his interface and prepares to summon something much more forceful. He has a different plan in mind. He calls his elite team. Dex, Ramba, and his other summons appear surrounded by a blue glow, ready to ignore any conventional strategy. A gigantic metal fist crashes into the golem. Instead of weakening it slowly, Jinwoo prefers to use brute force with pure explosive damage. His B-rank titanium golem stands imposingly before the boss. The difference in power is so obvious that it is terrifying. Jinwoo watches the scene and realizes he cannot sell this video as a guide. No one else has summons of this caliber to copy his moves. He imagines himself as a chef on a cooking show, saying that today's recipe is sautéed golem. First, bring out your X-rank summons. Obviously, the audience would go crazy because no one has that. He sweats a drop thinking that his guide would just be saying, use the wolf to lower its defense and then destroy it, something everyone already knows, but which he makes look stupidly easy. He points at his titanium golem, which already has the boss on the ropes. There are no tricks, just raw and pure power. Jinwoo orders the final attack. They go straight for the earth golem's weak point, the head. If the core falls, the game is over. His titanium golem prepares for the frontal clash, while the boss roars trying to defend itself from the inevitable. One of his winged summons dives at incredible speed, cutting through the air with blue energy. Thursday's record is about to become history. Ramba gets ready with her staff, prepared for action. Jinwoo gives the attack order. Hunjio, Flame Dragon Mage, it is your turn. Facing the enormous golem, the plan is simple, straight to the head to finish this quickly. The impact is brutal. The earth golem cannot even withstand the first serious blow. Debris flies everywhere as the creature falls apart under the pressure of the attack. Dex watches the chaos, staying on guard amid the dust of battle. The swordsman sheathes his weapon as he sees that the heavy work is almost done. The stone giant finishes collapsing, leaving nothing but a pile of useless rocks on the ground. But the final touch is still missing. Hunjio raises his staff, and the air truly begins to burn throughout the room. The mage concentrates all her power into the gem of her staff, which shines with blinding intensity. A massive fire dragon emerges from the flames, completely devouring what remains of the boss. The golem disappears in a column of smoke and ashes. Absolutely nothing is left of the creature. Hunjio walks across the scorched ground, while the system confirms that the dungeon has been completed. Jinwoo checks his results panel. He broke the national record by a full minute, clocking in at 5 minutes and 10 seconds. He looks at his summon, astonished by how broken that destructive skill is. As powerful as it is, Jinwoo knows he cannot depend on Hunjio alone for all future records. He starts thinking about new long-term strategies while analyzing the raid data. Hunjio gets excited knowing he can annihilate high-level dungeons in the blink of an eye. Jinwoo thanks him for the good work. They are already planning the next raid. Dex and little Ramba wait for their master to decide the group's next destination. It is time to keep moving forward. The group ventures deeper into the dungeon ruins to explore. Upon exiting the portal, Jinwoo finds a surprise waiting for him in the real world. A guy in a suit intercepts him right at the portal's exit. "Excuse me, are you the player Baek Jinwoo?" It turns out they are two men sent by the director's office at central headquarters. One of them extends an elegant card to him. They are direct envoys from HQ's central offices. Jinwoo takes the card and glances at it with little interest. He can already imagine where this is going. He asks them what they want, assuming everything had already been settled with central headquarters before. The envoy explains that they have reviewed the proposal Jinwoo made to them last time. Now that Jinwoo has shown real results, they are willing to look at his case more favorably. Jinwoo does not even think twice. With a flick of his hand, he tells them he will pass on their offer. The two men are left stunned. They did not expect a newbie to reject central headquarters so quickly. Jinwoo laughs inwardly. Now that he has the power, they are the ones coming to beg with pretty words. The difference is clear. Eugia trusted him and offered real money, while these people are still stuck in bureaucracy. Jinwoo is sick of their attitude. These men are the complete opposite of the trust Gia gave him. The envoy starts sweating as he realizes the situation is slipping out of his hands. Jinwoo picks at his ear and ignores their explanations. He tells them he already has a contract and that they should speak with Eugia of Ubik. I'm leaving, Jinwoo says as he turns his back on them. The envoy cannot believe he is being left talking to himself. Confused, the subordinate asks his superior what the hell Ubik even is. The other envoy turns pale upon realizing it is Eugia's company, tied to the powerful Deseong group. Deep down, the veteran feels that they just lost the biggest opportunity of their careers because of their arrogance. In the chat, the HQ messages sound like pure desperation. Jinwoo has simply left the conversation. Alone beneath the city sky, Jinwoo knows that now he is the one who has full control over the rules. Jinwoo stops to watch the horizon. He knows that with what he has now, it should be enough for the next step. He remembers that Friday's dungeon has nothing to do with what he has faced so far. It is a different kind of challenge. Unlike other days when his summons did all the work, here the player has to get their hands dirty and run personally in order to win. It is time to put himself to the test. Jinwoo opens his system menu, determined to start practicing seriously. With a tap on the screen, he summons the B-rank Sky Wyvern. An imposing winged creature appears out of nowhere. The wyvern descends in front of him, ready to serve its master in this new aerial training. From above, the city looks like a toy. Jinwoo knows the shield protects him from falling, but the height still makes him a little dizzy. The sky wyvern looks at its rider curiously, waiting for orders while beating its wings strongly. Jinwoo strokes the creature's snout, trying to get used to its presence before taking off. Ready? Jinwoo asks as he settles onto the beast's back, holding on firmly. Let's head toward the East Sea, he orders. The wyvern takes off at full speed, leaving the skyscrapers behind. Jinwoo feels the wind hitting his face. Suddenly, something on the horizon catches his attention. It is incredible. Flying over buildings at this speed is an experience unlike anything he has ever felt before. Is this really fun? Jinwoo exclaims with a huge grin, enjoying every second of the flight. Fearless of the speed, he heads out toward the open sea. All right, here we go, he shouts as the city shrinks in the distance. The scene changes to the coast of Yangyang, where sea waves crash strongly against the shore on a clear day. On the beach, Jinwoo meets with his main summons, Hunjio and Dex, to evaluate his progress in the air. Dex, acting like a strict instructor, claps enthusiastically. The speed at which you are learning to fly is extraordinary, master. Jinwoo feels the pressure. Jinwoo talks with Hunjio about the difficulties of the technique, realizing that piloting a beast is not as easy as it looked. Dex remembers through sweat and tears how much they suffered the first time they tried to ride a wyvern. It was hellish training. Hunjio even gets dizzy just remembering it. In their glory days, they also had to go through the ordeal of riding wyverns and sky dolphins. As expected of Jinugod, worthy of being our master, Hunjio exclaims with admiration, making Jinwoo blush a little. Well, putting that aside, Jinwoo says, trying to change the subject and regain his composure before his loyal servants. So next is sky dolphin riding practice, right? He asks as they all look together toward the vast ocean. Jinwoo knows that learning from veterans like them is the fastest path. I am counting on you, his summons accept with complete loyalty. A few days later, the moment of truth arrives in Friday's dungeon. The place is a giant obstacle course full of blocks. Jinwoo is ready for the challenge, dressed in a black sports outfit and fully focused on the starting line. This is the dungeon that drops special runes and the one that made him world famous. The system announces that the race will begin in 10 seconds. He summons the Wind Falcon. Cast the movement speed buff on me, Jinwoo orders as he prepares for the explosive start. The countdown begins dramatically on the system interface. 3. Jinwoo gets into running position. 2. The course stretches out before him, a maze of colorful blocks he must navigate with surgical precision. 1. Jinwoo fixes his gaze on the first obstacle with the determination of someone who does not intend to lose even a single millisecond on his record. Geo, with the starting cry, Jinwoo bursts forward at superhuman speed, leaving a blue trail behind him. An explosion of energy marks the start of his run. This is not just running, it is pure strategy and reflexes in motion. He dodges projectiles and blocks with astonishing agility, moving among them as if he knew every inch of the course beforehand. His mind processes every jump and every turn before executing them. Jinwoo is in his element, enjoying the physical challenge the dungeon offers. He leaps between platforms with perfect fluidity, without losing even a shred of his initial speed despite the obstacles. Running like this by his own power is far more gratifying than simply controlling everything through a system screen. With an expression of absolute confidence, Jinwoo prepares for the most difficult section of the course. He knows the record is within reach. It is time to enter the first hidden route, Jinwoo thinks with a defiant smile as he approaches the edge of the track. He throws himself into the void toward the sea, where the course seems to end abruptly for any other normal player. Jinwoo knows a secret the others ignore. Normally, you would keep running straight over the water, but I have other plans. Impact with the water is imminent, but Jinwoo has no intention of simply falling uncontrollably. As he plummets toward the sea, he stays absolutely calm, waiting for the exact moment to execute his secret maneuver. Sky Dolphin, Jinwoo exclaims with a triumphant smile as he activates his summon just before touching the surface. A majestic sea rank, Sky Dolphin rises from the depths to receive its master in mid-flight. Jinwoo takes a deep breath and prepares for the underwater phase of his risky but brilliant strategy. With a huge burst of water, rider and mount dive at full speed, disappearing from the view of any observer. Underwater, the path is completely clear. Jinwoo knows that using the Sky Dolphin allows him to avoid the obstacles that slow everyone else down. Pressing his lips together to hold his breath, Jinwoo watches the surface while they move at incredible speed through the ocean depths. Suddenly, the dolphin bursts out of the water with an acrobatic leap. Sky Wyvern, Jinwoo shouts, summoning his winged ally for the next step. From here on, Jinwoo thinks as he launches himself from the dolphin's back in mid-jump, rising with agility. With perfect coordination, he lands on the Sky Wyvern's back. "It is time to fly," he exclaims, ready for the grand finale. "We are just going to fly over the rest of the obstacles," Jinwoo decides as his wyvern beats its wings powerfully toward the finish line. The finish line finally appears, marked with a bright goal sign above the system's digital grid. Adrenaline runs through Jinwoo's body as he approaches the goal at dizzying speed. "Let's go." Goal, Jinwoo and his wyvern cross the line in an instant. The system immediately confirms that he has completed the course. Jinwoo lets out a sigh of relief, exhausted but radiant. The timer shows a record time, only 2 minutes and 16 seconds. It is a new national record. Jinwoo celebrates euphorically as the system grants him a special achievement for his unprecedented feat.